Chapter 2593 Hidden Secret. Chapter 2593 Hidden Secret. Zhao Shuang's expression was ashen as he swallowed the poisonous pill. He felt as if he had nothing more to live for. Ling Han chuckled in his mind. Where would he get a poisonous pill from? He had merely done this to frighten Zhao Shuang. However, in order to convince Zhao Shuang, he purposefully used some techniques to make Zhao Shuang feel intense pain in his abdomen. This pain was tolerable, yet it definitely couldn't be ignored. Zhao Shuang was a cowardly person, and it wasn't long before he collapsed, saying, "Brother Long, I feel like the poison is about to spread. Hurry, give me the antidote." Pun! Ling Han sent him flying with a kick. If this pill weren't produced by him, he might have truly been fooled by Zhao Shuang's terrified expression, and he might have been fooled into thinking the poisonous pill was genuine. Enough with the nonsense. Hurry up! Ling Han didn't waste any time as he dragged Zhao Shuang along. News of Zhao Shuang being kidnapped would definitely spread throughout the city in no time. Even though the herbal garden was in a remote location, it was still only a matter of time before the news spread over. Thus, Ling Han had to enter and exit the herbal garden before this news arrived. This herbal garden was indeed located in an extremely remote location. It was hidden inside a desolate mountain, yet it was still protected by formations on all sides. There was also an eighth heaven celestial king standing guard. Ling Han had entered the spatial celestial tool long ago, and only Zhao Shuang remained walking in the outside world, with the spatial celestial tool hidden on his body. This was a risky plan. If Zhao Shuang suddenly discovered some courage, and asked the eighth heaven celestial king for help, Ling Han would immediately become trapped. Even if he could flee, he would definitely have to pay a huge price. However, Ling Han was an audacious person, and he was also convinced that a profligate second-generation young master like Zhao Shuang would definitely value his life above all else. He wouldn't dare to bring them both down together. Zhao Shuang took a deep breath, and wiped the expression of fear and anxiety from his face. He then reverted to his temperament of a profligate second-generation young master as he strode into the mountain. "Zhao Shuang, you've come to steal medicines again?" someone said in a mocking tone. Zhao Shuang felt his eyes blur, and before he knew it, there was already a person standing before him. This person had 8 ribbons of iridescent light around him, and he was none other than the celestial king who was guarding the herbal garden. Zhao Shuang's heart burned, and he almost spat out a call for help. However, he immediately recalled Ling Han's calm expression that seemingly hid an infinite amount of confidence. A cold chill involuntarily ran down his spine. One had to realize that many ninth heaven celestial kings had been sent out to hunt for him back then. However, they had still failed to capture Ling Han. In fact, all of this was a misunderstanding that had been caused by Zhang Feiyu's sudden appearance. However, in terms of the end results, this was indeed true. Moreover, people who heard this story wouldn't consider so much. They would simply think that Ling Han was an incredibly freakish person even ninth heaven celestial kings couldn't capture. Thus, Zhao Shuang naturally had even less confidence in an eighth heaven celestial king. If Ling Han managed to escape, who would give him the antidote for the poisonous pill? With this in mind, he immediately poured a bucket of cold water over his burning heart. "Uncle Su, you jest. I'm only here to take a look," he said. "You say this every time, but when have you ever been honest?" the eighth heaven celestial king said with a smile. However, he still waved his hand, saying, "Go ahead." This was Zhao Yuanyi's command. As long as Zhao Shuang didn't take things too far, he could allow him to steal some Brahman's celestial flowers. This was his son, after all. Zhao Shuang nodded in acknowledgement before walking into the mountain. After taking a few steps, he couldn't help but steal a backward glance. He felt a strong urge in his mind, yet he ultimately didn't open his mouth. After Zhao Shuang ventured deep into the mountain, Ling Han exited his spatial celestial tool. He had already channeled the heaven-deceiving technique, so as long as he didn't attack anyone, even ninth heaven celestial kings wouldn't be able to detect his existence. Of course, this was unless they saw him with their eyes. This was a herbal garden in which many celestial medicines were being cultivated. However, many of them were extremely young, rendering them useless to celestial kings. They needed at least a few more epochs before they could be of any use. Ling Han was even more astonished upon seeing this. Even celestial king-tier great herbs were extremely difficult to cultivate, so why were ascending dragon pills so abundant in number? Theoretically speaking, didn't Brahman celestial flowers require several epochs to grow and produce fruit? This would in turn severely limit the production of ascending dragon pills. Brother Long, this is the place, Zhao Shuang said as he pointed at a plot of land. Ling Han looked over. These are Brahman celestial flowers? This was an extremely eerie and colorful type of plant. Its stem was bright red as blood, and its leaves were purple and filled with azure veins. These colors would instantly grab one's attention. Some Brahman celestial flowers were already blooming, with their flowers as large as fists, and their petals extremely lush and healthy. Their colors were more so extremely attractive. Some were still flower buds, while some had already produced fruit, which were similarly colorful. Ling Han walked over for a closer look. These flowers were extremely colorful. In fact, they were so colorful that they seemed eerie and bewitching. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a sinister aura from them. This wasn't an illusion. Ling Han could smell blood. Ling Han turned around and asked, "What are these flowers watered with? Brother Long, I feel like I can't breathe. Did you calculate the time wrong? Is the poison already spreading?" Zhao Shuang was extremely anxious and uneasy, and he didn't hear Ling Han's question at all. "Pa!" Ling Han gave him a good slap, finally waking him up. Zhao Shuang cradled his face in grief as he said, "Brother Long, why did you hit me? I asked you a question." Zhao Shuang shuddered, but he still asked, "Brother Long, what did you ask?" Ling Han shook his head before repeating his question again. "I don't know," Zhao Shuang replied with a shake of his head. Ling Han didn't ask any more questions. In the eyes of this second-generation young master, there was nothing more to it than Brahman celestial flowers and astonishing wealth. As for how these Brahman celestial flowers were cultivated, Zhao Shuang didn't care at all. As Ling Han continued to observe the Brahman celestial flowers, a speculation slowly formed in his mind. After a while, he suddenly shuddered before turning to Zhao Shuang and saying, "Someone's coming over. Don't give away any clues." Whoosh! He entered the spatial celestial tool. Sure enough, it wasn't long before someone walked over. This was a fifth heaven celestial king. After seeing Zhao Shuang, he hurriedly greeted him in respect, saying, "This underling pays his respects to young master." Zhao Shuang nodded in acknowledgement. The fifth heaven celestial king walked up to the field of Brahman celestial flowers before sweeping his hand and tossing forth numerous corpses. There were the corpses of humans, beasts, birds, and many more. However, they were all celestial kings. Even though they had died, they still radiated with a powerful aura that couldn't be faked. Zhao Shuang's eyes widened in disbelief. This was because Ling Han had only just asked about this a moment ago, so he was able to immediately connect the dots. Sure enough, the fifth heaven celestial king chopped the corpses of the celestial kings into pieces, transforming them into blood, water, and bone scraps as he buried them in the field. His movements were practiced, and it was as if he had already done this many times before. Thus, he was able to finish his task in no time. He then turned to Zhao Shuang, nodding, and said, "This subordinate will take his leave now." Zhao Shuang was still transfixed with shock, so he simply gave a stiff nod of acknowledgement. After the celestial king left, Ling Han reappeared once again. His expression was solemn. Sure enough, it was as he had speculated. Before, he had always been curious about why ascending dragon pills only existed in the celestial king graveyard. Moreover, the effects of these pills were so potent and heaven-defying. Now, the answer had finally appeared before him. This was because Brahman celestial flowers were cultivated using the corpses of celestial kings. This was equivalent to using celestial kings to raise more celestial kings. Moreover, this behavior would definitely lead to a huge waste of resources. Perhaps the corpses of 10 celestial kings could only raise a single celestial king. However, this didn't matter. This was the celestial king graveyard, so a large number of celestial kings would be sent here each year, providing them with a large amount of resources. It was no wonder why so many celestial kings without a powerful background were also tossed into this place. This was the fundamental reason. Hang on. If ascending dragon pills can't be taken to the outside world, why do the celestial kings in the outside world need to do this? Why do they insist on tossing these celestial kings inside? Gasp! Ling Han instantly came to a realization. This was very likely related to a colossal black market. Chapter 2594 Studying the Real Body. Chapter 2594 Studying the Real Body. In the outside world, there had to be forces stretching out their hands, enabling them to obtain the ascending dragon pill. Perhaps there was not just one such force like this. Furthermore, because of the effects of the ascending dragon pill, the forces that were involved in this profitable business had to be extremely powerful, and might even have heavenly venerable tier background. Otherwise, how could they bring out the ascending dragon pill? Putting himself in the shoes of another, if Ling Han was a heavenly venerate himself, what would he do to obtain the ascending dragon pill? Send a 9th heaven celestial king here. Moreover, it had to be one that was extremely strong in terms of battle prowess, the kind that could conquer a city. In that case, they could then obtain a great number of celestial king tier bodies, allowing them to cultivate the Brahman celestial flowers on a large scale. At a certain time, he would then move, unlocking the celestial king graveyard, and retrieve the ascending dragon pill. This was not jailbreak, so it was not difficult for them to achieve this. Otherwise, they could use the excuse that the celestial king that they had sent was training here, and retrieve both their subordinate and the alchemical pill itself. For example, the black donkey would retrieve Ling Han after 100 million years, so how could it be that other heavenly venerates could not do something similar? Ling Han frowned deeply. This should be a massive black market chain of profits. If he touched it, he could possibly be targeted by a heavenly venerable. Perhaps it was not just one heavenly venerate either, but a few, or even more than that. I do indeed have a halo of calamity on me, he mused ruefully. He had entered this place only for the sake of battle so he could rapidly increase his own cultivation level. He had not expected that he would come into contact with such a great matter. Naturally, he could just stand by and watch. In any case, the majority of celestial kings that had been tossed here were all deserving of their punishment. I don't know what's the matter, but I keep having a feeling something is off. Ling Han pondered deeply. Even if he had discovered the secret of the ascending dragon pill, this was equivalent to having a considerable number of celestial kings being sacrificed for the sake of a single celestial king. However, as an alchemist, he still could not accept this kind of alchemical pill completely. Alchemical pills were never as simple as that. If it was expanded in this manner, then wouldn't it mean that the refinement of over a dozen celestial king tier great herbs produced the same effects as the ascending dragon pill? No way! So how could the ascending dragon pill do this? Ling Han could not explain it, but with the instincts of an alchemy emperor, he felt that the Brahman celestial flowers were not as simple as something nurtured with the flesh and blood of celestial kings. He plucked 2 Brahman celestial flowers, which he stowed into the spatial celestial tool. He could slowly study them in the future. Then, Zhao Shuang led him away. How could Zhao Shuang dare to say anything else? He immediately left with his spatial celestial tool, and did not even bring any Brahman celestial flowers with him. That was because he knew that if he did take any with him, he would still have to surrender them to Ling Han. When he left, that 8th heaven celestial king came out to take a look. When he discovered that only 2 Brahman celestial flowers had been taken, he allowed Zhao Shuang to leave easily. Otherwise, he would definitely make Zhao Shuang hand over the Brahman celestial flowers. After leaving At present, Ling Han had already found out all that he should know. Hence, should he still continue staying in Ghost King City? After thinking for a while, Ling Han decided to stay. It was precisely because there were a great many ninth heaven celestial kings that all wanted to capture him that this would give him enough pressure so that he could maintain this rapid increase of his cultivation level. Then, let's have a fair fight. Ling Han's fighting spirit blazed hotly. The greater the pressure, the higher his fighting spirit would soar. Furthermore, his character was also very stubborn. You people want to capture me and kill me, but I will choose to stay here and bring trouble to you. Moreover, he also wanted to find out the origins of that mysterious powerful figure from Lu Gaojian. Who exactly was he? Previously, he did not understand, but now, because of the ascending dragon pill, it was possible that this involved the contest among several powerful forces, which were all fighting over the market for Brahman celestial flowers. That was because the more power their subordinates grasped, the more Brahman celestial flowers they could cultivate. Correspondingly, the more ascending dragon pills there would be as well. If this thing was brought outside, it would be something that could change the power structure of a world. Zhao Shuang's disappearance naturally caused a great commotion inside the city. This meant that the mysterious murderer had not practiced any restraint because of the invasion of the Azure Ghost Celestial King and the others against prosperous opening city. He had once more stretched out his hand to do evil. Yet thinking from another aspect, was it prosperous opening city that could no longer hold up to the pressure, and had to use this kind of method to force the invading troops into retreat? The people of Ghost King City did not know, because the distance between the two cities was too large. Another year passed, and the invading troops finally returned. A great many celestial kings were injured, and there were also a considerable number that would never be able to return. However, the Azure Ghost Celestial King gave an announcement that caused great excitement, and that was that they had won. They had forced prosperous opening city to pay an extremely exorbitant price in exchange for stopping the assault of their troops. However, once they returned to the city lord's residence, the expressions of all the ninth heaven celestial kings darkened. Though they were victorious, their losses were also tremendous. More importantly, they had made a great mistake. That was because that Li Long was not from prosperous opening city at all. Zhang Feiyu had even placed a Dao oath, and claimed that he did not know Li Long at all, and had completely no links to Lu Li's death at all. A Dao oath could still be trusted. Thus, the Azure Ghost Celestial King and the others were certain that Zhang Feiyu should have just happened to bear the blame for Ling Han. However, whether it was Zhang Feiyu or prosperous opening city, either of them could remove themselves from the matter entirely, because they had indeed been scheming against Ghost King City. The two sides did not continue fighting, because though the side of Ghost King City had the upper hand, it was not a crushing advantage. If they did not withdraw their troops, then even if Ghost King City's side could win, it would be a Pyrrhic victory, and their strength would drop to rock bottom. By then, other forces could take the chance to attack them, and that would be equivalent to them having paved the way for others. That Li Long, who exactly is he? The Azure Ghost Celestial King asked gravely. Master, according to my investigations, this person should have just recently entered into the Celestial King graveyard. The Yin River Celestial King immediately stepped out, and related his information about Ling Han. Actually, it was nothing secret. Ling Han had overcome various opponents in the tournament grounds, and was extremely bold and invincible. This was something that was known to everyone. It is definitely abnormal for a mere fourth heaven celestial king to possess such battle prowess, Tang Ningbo declared gravely. By now, he had completely calmed down. Fury had no use to him when trying to avenge the death of his son. True. The Azure Ghost Celestial King nodded in agreement. To say nothing of Supreme Monarch stars, even if their evolution index had reached 12, there is no possible way he could match a 7th heaven Celestial King when he himself is only in the 4th heaven. He should be holding a colossal secret, Lu Gaoquan said, and glanced at Lu Gaojian. Could it be that he, too, holds the secret of heavenly venerable Tyr? All the celestial kings exclaimed in shock. This was the only way to explain it. Because they were all 9th heaven celestial kings, they definitely could not think of any other means that could allow a 4th heaven celestial king to ignore the overwhelming suppression of cultivation level, and be powerful to such a vicious, sinister extent. Since a heavenly venerable tier secret technique could appear here, why couldn't there be another? Lu Gaojian could not confirm it either. He only knew that the ninth heaven celestial king was extremely strong, and when all 9 scrolls were united, the battle prowess was boundlessly frightening. However, he did not know whether it could give a 4th heaven celestial king the strength to fight a 7th heaven celestial king. All in all, we have to find this Li Long, the Azure Ghost celestial king declared grimly. Previously, he has committed another crime. If we do not get rid of this boy, what will be left of our dignity? Yes. The other celestial kings all nodded. With 9th heaven celestial kings standing guard, Ling Han still managed to do as he liked, killing as he liked, then all of them would really be disgraced. Additionally, we have to investigate this Li Long further. I suspect that this identity of his may be false. The Azure Ghost Celestial King continued. Chapter 2595 Desolate Moon Alliance. Chapter 2595 Desolate Moon Alliance. Someone from the outside who had come to train? Zhao Yuanyi immediately asked. The disappearance of his son was the doing of that Li Long, so he was the one who wanted to find Ling Han more than anyone else because it was possible that his son was still alive. It is very possible. Otherwise, someone who has such astonishing battle prowess, even if he really had killed his fellow disciples, should still have been exempted from punishment, Lu Gaojian said. At present, the greatest enemy that was laid out in front of all of them was hysteria. As long as they could resist the main forces of hysteria in the future, then no matter what crime they had committed, it could still be forgiven, or at least they would be given the chance to redeem themselves by good service. With how freakish Ling Han's battle prowess was, how could he possibly be thrown into the Celestial King graveyard and allowed to rot? Hence, the chance that he had come here to train was greater. Damn it! All the Celestial Kings humphed coldly. They could be considered to feel great hatred for all those who had come here just for training. Yet the Azure Ghost Celestial King's expression was cold and aloof. That was because only he himself knew that he actually could be somewhat considered as being here to train as well, but his motive was definitely not to advance his own cultivation level, but rather the Brahman's celestial flowers. There was more that he thought about. Could Ling Han have been sent by some kind of force? Maybe his motive was the same as his, and that was for the sake of the Brahman's celestial flowers. Brother Lu, he glanced towards Lu Gaojian. When will we be acting? Lu Gaojian nodded his head and said, The ancient tomb is extremely important. The instruction from Lord Desolate Moon is to unite the power of all the 9th heaven celestial kings inside the Celestial King graveyard and open it together. Thus, there will be no action for now. Please wait a while longer, Brother Azure Ghost. When the time comes, I will inform you. This answer did not please the Azure Ghost Celestial King very much. He frowned slightly and asked, Then when will we be able to obtain the second part of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll? Brother Azure Ghost, do not rush. According to the agreement, when we have arrived in front of the ancient tomb, Lord Desolate Moon will hand over the second part of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, Lu Gaojian said smilingly. Everyone's eyes became heated. After obtaining all 9 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll and combining them into one, they would be able to break through to the Heavenly Venerable Tier. The temptation of this to them was really too great. Once they had become Heavenly Venerates themselves, they would be able to leave this fucking place. Even though they were all 9th Heaven Celestial Kings, high and lofty, once the Ghost King's city was conquered by an opposing force, the possibility that they would die with the city was extremely high. In this place, the lives of Celestial Kings were worth nothing, and even 9th Heaven Celestial Kings could be sacrificed. Then we'll make use of this time, and find that Li Long first, the Azure Ghost Celestial King declared coldly. The eyes of all the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings spat fire. There were only a rare few whose descendants had not been killed by Ling Han, so it was natural that they wanted nothing more than to capture Ling Han and execute him. Ling Han did not cease his course of bloodshed. He would occasionally make a move. If there were higher-tier Celestial Kings on guard, he would avoid them without any battle, but if there weren't, he would move without any hesitation, causing complete chaos and mayhem in Ghost King's city. He was clearly just a fourth heaven celestial king, so how could he possibly cause such great commotion? Firstly, Ghost King's city was too large. Furthermore, this was a prison for holding celestial kings, with the power laid down by heavenly venerates. The ground was very firm, and had a unique weakening effect on a sweep of divine sense. Even a ninth heaven celestial king could not possibly cover every single inch of this ground. Secondly, Ling Han had copied the actions of the Azure Ghost Celestial King, and made some modifications to the formation patterns, allowing his spatial celestial tool to have even better coverage. He even wanted to instill the heaven-deceiving technique into the celestial tools so it would have a disguising effect as well. This was not impossible, because celestial tools were formed from a celestial weapon equipped with one's individual martial intent in the first place. However, talking was easy, but it was not an easy matter to truly achieve this. In any case, Ling Han did not lack time. When the search efforts were intense in the city, he would study this matter inside the spatial celestial tool. Time passed quickly, and 10,000 years had already passed. Ling Han had finally instilled the heaven-deceiving technique into the spatial celestial tool so that this celestial tool would have better security. Even if a ninth heaven celestial king was staring at him, they would still be unable to distinguish it from any other ordinary stone. For the sake of this, Ling Han had also disguised this thing as a small stone. This shall be named Celestial Guest Residence. Ling Han decided to bestow this name on this spatial celestial tool. He repeated this name a few times, and thought that this name was really not bad. He was really pleased with it. However, it still cannot compare to the Black Tower yet. The Black Tower could shrink as he willed it, turning into a mote of dust, a mustard seed, but the Celestial Guest Residence still could not change its size for now. In terms of tool refinement, I still have a long way to go. Though the Celestial Guest Residence could not freely change its size, which was a disadvantage, Ling Han was already relatively satisfied. He'd just have to work the rest out step by step in the future. And after so many years, his cultivation level had also considerably improved. That was because every time he acted, it did not always mean he could escape successfully. There were a great many times that he had been hunted down by eighth heaven celestial kings, and he had only managed to escape after expending an astronomical amount of effort. Continuously roaming the border between life and death, tempering himself amidst danger, the rate of his cultivation was naturally speedy. And added with the fact that there was a large amount of celestial medicines here, the present Ling Han had already pushed the cultivation level of fourth heaven to the third step. It had happened in a mere 10,000 years. Going by this kind of calculation, he would be able to break through to the fifth heaven in another 20 to 30,000 years. This speed was astonishingly rapid. And in these past 10 millennia, a great many major events had happened. A colossal alliance had taken form, and it was called the Desolate Moon Alliance. Ghost King's city belonged to the Desolate Moon Alliance, and the alliance leader was a mysterious elite who went by the name Desolate Moon. It was rumored that at least one-third of the forces here in the Celestial King Graveyard had already fallen under the jurisdiction of the Desolate Moon Alliance by now. This compelled the other forces to have no choice but to gather together. Otherwise, wherever the blade of the Desolate Moon Alliance pointed towards, who would be able to put up any resistance? Thankfully, the internal structure of the Desolate Moon Alliance was considerably lax. Desolate Moon did not demand that every single force had to pledge their complete loyalty to him. Allies were only just allies as well. Perhaps all the forces had managed to quickly assimilate together, as one precisely because of this. Ling Han had long since released Zhao Shuang, but he made the latter believe that he had fallen for a great poison, and had to occasionally ingest the antidote to suppress the poison. He was a very good spy. How could Zhao Yuani suspect his own son? Hence, Ling Han easily came to know a great many secrets, and also precisely due to this had Ling Han avoided the traps that were deliberately laid out by the ninth heaven celestial kings a great many times. On this day, Zhao Shuang had come to retrieve the antidote, as per usual. "Brother Long, I have found out some great information again. Zhao Shuang had completely lost all his temper by now. Furthermore, he was already one of the most well-known profligates in Ghost King City by now, and this was all thanks to Ling Han. Ling Han asked. Oh, what information? Do you remember? A very long time ago, I said that my father and the others had been willing to join the Desolate Moon Alliance. Firstly, it is because of the 9 transformations divine scroll, and secondly, it is due to the ancient tomb. Once there are enough 9th heaven celestial kings gathered together, it can be opened. There are astonishing treasures that lie within, Zhao Shuang said. And Ling Han nodded. Previously, Lu Gaojian received word and informed my father that they would set out for the ancient tomb 10 days later. Zhao Shuang had indeed revealed an important piece of information. Ling Han was instantly moved and asked, 10 days? Brother Long, are you going? Zhao Shuang asked. The underlying message was, if you are planning to go, please help remove this poison from me. I feel uneasy and anxious every single day. I really am about to break down. Ling Han grinned. Of course. He patted Zhao Shuang's shoulder. In the future, don't do too many despicable deeds. Yes. Zhao Shuang nodded hurriedly. Brother Long, about the permanent antidote? Chapter 2596 Untitled. Chapter 2596 Untitled. Ling Han looked at Zhao Shuang smilingly. What eternal antidote? Ah, you were the one who poisoned me, and you don't know what the eternal antidote is? You can't play around with me like this. Zhao Shuang hurriedly replied with a grin. Aren't I poisoned now? It has already been over 10,000 years. It has always been dormant inside my body, and I fear that there would be after effects. What if some kind of residual trouble is left behind? I'll be honest with you, Brother Long, I still have no children yet, so I'm afraid that it would affect the later generation. Ling Han felt an urge to burst out laughing. He had not expected that this guy's personality would change so drastically in these 10,000 years. What was left of all his previous arrogance? Changing the topic, he asked further. How many from the Ghost King City would be going? Basically, every single 9th heaven celestial king would be going. There are also a few of us, these juniors and descendants, that are able to go with them, Zhao Shuang said. Are you? Ling Han looked at him. Zhao Shuang quickly shook his head. Of course, I am not going. It's so dangerous. Fuck this cowardly brat. Ling Han shook his head and said smilingly, Go back and tell your father that you have suddenly changed your mind and wish to go with him. Zhao Shuang's old man was a 9th heaven celestial king, so it was definitely no issue for him to bring some people with him. Ah? Zhao Shuang pulled a long face. Who did not know this kind of place was the most dangerous? He really did not want to go in the slightest. In any case, it was fine since his old man had gone. Whatever they obtained, he would definitely manage to obtain a share of the profits. In this way, there was no need for him to expend effort or take any risk either, and he would be able to reap what he has not sown. With something so good, wouldn't it be very dumb for him to take the risk instead? Ling Han clapped a hand on his shoulder. No problems, right? No. Zhao Shuang could only shake his head. It couldn't be helped that his life was grasped in Ling Han's hands, right? After Zhao Shuang returned, he indeed voiced out to Zhao Yuani that he wanted to go to the ancient tomb. This caused Zhao Yuani pleasant surprise, because Zhao Shuang naturally would not say that he had been threatened, but rather that he suddenly felt that, as a man, and the descendant of a 9th heaven celestial king at that, he needed to be more courageous. This naturally made Zhao Yuani feel very gratified. His son was finally showing some slight promise. If he knew that this was still because his son was afraid of dying, who knew just how furious he would be? After a few days, Zhao Shuang came once more to seek out Ling Han, bringing some information with him. Aside from the various great 9th heaven celestial kings, among the second-generation young masters, the Yin River celestial king and Yang Shaoling would both be going, and added with Zhao Shuang, these were the only 3 remaining descendants or disciples of the 3 great ninth heaven celestial kings of Ghost King City. "I'll just follow you and be a lackey." Ling Han looked over the name list and said to Zhao Shuang, grinning. Zhao Shuang could only grimace. How dared he treat this lord as a lackey? Several days later, the main forces set out. Ling Han mingled into the masses. Naturally, it was impossible that he would again take the form of Li Long, but it was not his true appearance either. Instead, he had just randomly altered his appearance, then had Zhao Shuang get him a false identity. The false identity that Zhao Shuang gave him was actually like a real identity. With the help of this kind of second-generation young master, what need was there for him to fear that he would not be able to pull off the deception? The group was actually very massive. Merely in terms of ninth heaven celestial kings, there were more than 20. On the other hand, it was the group of second-generation young masters that was relatively smaller, comprising of Zhao Shuang and the other 2, and added with some lackeys that they had brought with them, the total number was only over a dozen people. Ling Han did not draw anyone's attention. After all, he was just a lackey of a second-generation young master. Who would care about him? They flew the banner of the Desolate Moon Alliance, all of them seated on a warship. With ninth heaven celestial kings personally powering the warship, the speed was astonishingly quick. Furthermore, though the celestial king graveyard was extremely large, it was only a small world after all. No matter how big it was, there were still limits. 3 years later, they were finally drawing close to their destination. With ninth heaven celestial kings powering it personally, it actually still needed as many as 3 years. Because this world was turned by the power of a heavenly venerate into an independent space, the regulations of space were also greatly affected. One could teleport, but this was only possible in short ranges. It was not possible to travel over great distances through teleportation. Ling Han was sure that if he was journeying on his own, he would probably need around 20 years. Firstly, his speed was considerably slower than ninth heaven celestial kings, and secondly, it was impossible that he could journey at full speed in a single stroke over 20 years without the slightest bit of rest at all. Ahead of them, a gigantic, black-colored swamp lay. The warship stopped at the boundaries of the swamp and did not enter. Looking from midair, a black aura was wafting from the swamp. It looked like smoke as it turned into snake-like forms. This was a land of death. It was said that even ninth heaven celestial kings could not barge in here, as this could be fatal and deadly. The reason why Desolate Moon had gathered countless ninth heaven celestial kings together was so that they could conquer this whole area. That was because the ancient tomb was located in the most central zone of this swamp. Without sweeping aside all opposition in this swamp first, there would be no way for them to enter, so what was the point of speaking further of rewards? Ling Han still did not know exactly what precious treasures lay inside this ancient tomb, or was ancient the title of a certain elite, because Zhao Shuang had been unable to find out the exact details, no matter how hard he tried. Chapter 2597 Strong Resolution. Chapter 2597 Strong Resolution. Without waiting for the people of the 10,000 Dragons Alliance and Seasons Alliance to voice their objections, Desolate Moon stretched out a hand. Shua, a massive sphere of light, immediately appeared in front of him. Is he going to attack? How bold! Does he plan to challenge countless ninth heaven celestial kings all by himself? Humph, just biting off more than you can chew. All the celestial kings humphed coldly as they prepared themselves for attack. Each of them only had to launch a single attack, and Desolate Moon would definitely be eliminated. However, Desolate Moon did not attack. Countless seals appeared in the light sphere before him, and something that surpassed regulations was flickering within it. This is... All the celestial kings swept over a glance, and their eyes instantly lit up. 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, a heavenly venerable tier technique. Desolate Moon stated evenly. This was created by the 9 Transformations Heavenly Venerate. It is split into 9 parts. If one can obtain all 9 parts of the Divine Scroll, and master it completely, one will be able to cast aside the chains of heaven and earth, and attain the Heavenly Venerable tier. What? There is actually such an amazing technique. His heavenly venerable Tyr! The people from the 10,000 Dragons Alliance and Seasons Alliance all exclaimed in shock. They had heard that Desolate Moon was teaching some kind of secret technique within his alliance, but they did not believe it at all. Who would teach such a supreme, powerful technique for nothing? This had to be the conspiracy of the Desolate Moon Alliance, and their motive was to disintegrate their enemy's alliance. It definitely could not be trusted. But who could have expected that Desolate Moon would actually have such a strong resolve to teach them the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll in public like this? This was practically. They did not know what else they could say about this. Ling Han was also stunned. To say nothing of the fact that he was unable to teach the indestructible Heaven Scroll to others, but even if he could, it was impossible that he would just simply teach it to everyone he came across. Instead, he would control it within a strict range. For example, his wives, his son, his brothers, his disciples. But to actually teach it to one or even countless strangers, that was absolutely impossible. Just what madness had gripped Desolate Moon? It was definitely impossible that a heavenly venerate would allow a 9th heaven celestial king to advance into the heavenly venerable tier, and that was something Ling Han was sure about. However, a heavenly venerable tier technique was a heavenly venerable tier technique, after all, and possessed boundless might. For example, the indestructible Heaven Scroll. As long as Ling Han had the support of enough resources, he would be able to advance his physique to the level of divine metal. Then, he would be an indestructible and immortal being among celestial kings. Out of those who had attained the heavenly venerable tier, who would be weaker than the other? Thus, the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll had to be able to provide a frightening boost in terms of attack power. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, it might even possibly threaten the defenses granted by the indestructible Heaven Scroll. This kind of technique is just taught randomly and simply? Ling Han thought, but his eyes were focused on that sphere of light. No matter what, this 9 Transformations Divine Scroll was real, so he definitely would not miss out on it. In this moment, a dead silence had fallen. No one was interested in speaking. They were all greedily memorizing the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll. Every single person was staring fixedly at the sphere of light, as if that was a supreme precious treasure. The sphere of light flashed continuously, one seal after another flickering. This was a heavenly venerable tier technique, yet it had been split into 9 parts. It granted celestial kings the right to touch and grasp it. Otherwise, if the whole divine scroll was just thrown at them, even the most prodigious celestial king would be driven dizzy. From this aspect, the 9 Transformations Heavenly Venerate was truly amazing. About a day later, the sphere of light disappeared abruptly. Everyone was stunned, and felt a complete loss. Then, an extremely chaotic commotion burst out. "Friend Desolate Moon, why is this divine scroll incomplete?" someone asked. "That's right. Since Friend Desolate Moon did not mind sharing this heavenly venerable tier technique with us, why don't you simply take out the entire divine scroll? Friend Desolate Moon, we will remember this kindness, and will definitely repay you in future." Ling Han scoffed internally. Even if he believed a ghost, he would not believe the words of anyone in the Celestial King graveyard. There was only slaughter and bloodshed here. There was only profit and mutual deception. Easily trusting others would only lead to death. Though these Celestial Kings spoke very nice words, they only wanted to obtain the complete 9 Transformations Divine Scroll. Perhaps they would turn around and stab Desolate Moon in the back when they truly obtained it. No one knew what Desolate Moon was thinking. His face was not revealed, and no one could discern his expression or eyes. He said calmly, "I am not being stingy here, but rather I myself only possess 3 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll as well." When these words were said, a storm of protest rose among the crowd. With only 3 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, how were they to push open the doors to the heavenly venerable tier with it? Desolate Moon pressed down his hands. "However, through various clues, I have already discovered the whereabouts of the remaining 6 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll." He paused, and then continued, "That's right. They lie within this swamp, inside the ancient tomb. When these words fell, they instantly ignited everyone's excitement. They all turned to look towards the swamp, their eyes burning and their fighting spirits soaring sky high. As ninth heaven celestial kings, they naturally could determine the authenticity of the 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll they had previously seen. They were definitely authentic. Furthermore, their might was endless, containing supreme profound secrets. Hence, their desire to obtain the remaining 6 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll became even more intense. However, it was not everyone that would be this impulsive. Could the words spoken by Desolate Moon really be trusted? What if he actually had hold of the complete 9 transformations divine scroll, yet had given them false information so that they would put their lives on the line and work for him? But if Desolate Moon really possessed the complete 9 transformations divine scroll, yet was still scheming for what lay within the ancient tomb, that meant that the object that was hidden within was incredibly precious. At the very least, it would not be inferior in value to the 9 transformations divine scroll. Otherwise, what need was there to use a heavenly venerable tier technique as a recruitment tactic? Everyone held their own individual thoughts, but they reached an agreement on one matter, and that was that they definitely had to raise this swamp to the ground. The great celestial kings all worked together. They were all 9th heaven celestial kings. Otherwise, even 8th heaven celestial kings were not qualified to participate. This swamp was extremely terrifying, and the black chi wafting from it possessed frighteningly deadly might. Even 9th heaven celestial kings would have to resist it with their full effort. The highest tier regulation of poison. Ling Han came to this conclusion after surveying it for a few days. The highest tier of regulations was the 9th heaven celestial king tier, and only 9th heaven celestial kings would be able to match this level. Moreover, a streak of black chi from this place was equivalent to a single 9th heaven celestial king that cultivated the regulation of poison. Just the thought of that was frightening enough. It could only be swept aside bit by bit through the combined efforts of countless 9th heaven celestial kings. Their progress was exceedingly slow because their enemy was too strong. The news spread out, and even more 9th heaven celestial kings arrived. Desolate Moon was not miserly at all. In any case, the 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll had already been taught to so many people. Any 9th heaven celestial king who came would be allowed to learn. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years. The celestial kings were all forging onward steadily. After all, they were true 9th heaven celestial kings, so how could they be deterred by poisonous chi that was born in nature? However, looking down from above, there was still no sign of boundaries for the swamp. Who knew how many more hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years it would need before it could finally be eradicated? Thankfully, the one thing that celestial kings did not lack was time. They had no fear of immortals' tribulation. As long as they were not killed by other elites, their lifespan was unlimited. Ling Han would also go to the swamp and extract a streak of poisonous chi to temper himself. It almost resulted in his death every time. In the most serious case, his whole body even rotted, and he nearly just died like that. This was a battle with a 9th heaven celestial king. Even if it was just a sliver or a streak, it was extremely terrifying. He could be easily killed. This was absolutely playing with fire. But the effects were astonishing. The constant battle with 9th heaven celestial king tier regulations caused his cultivation level to improve by leaps and bounds as he rapidly and steadily advanced towards the peak stage of the 4th heaven. 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Time passed very quickly, but the swamp was still there, as if there was no end to it. Just how long would they have to continue doing this? Chapter 2598 Group of Ancient Tombs. Chapter 2598 Group of Ancient Tombs. More and more people came here, not only 9th heaven celestial kings, but also the 8th heaven, 7th heaven, and even lower-level celestial kings. Everyone knew that the 9th heaven celestial kings had a great plan to level a dangerous place, wherein hid earth-shattering treasures that could even turn a celestial king into a heavenly venerate. Who was the first to spread this news? It could no longer be verified. However, it obviously had an amazing effect as it caused this area to be extremely crowded and filled with oceans of people. When there were too many people, conflicts would inevitably arise. Furthermore, there were no rules in the Celestial King graveyard. Killing people was a very common thing. Bloody battles occurred on a daily basis. In fact, even large-scale team battles would burst out. The Empress and Bewitching Maiden Road disguised themselves to participate in many team battles since it would not be conducive for their growth to always work in seclusion. They were unlike Little Terror. Its combat abilities had been instinctively ingrained, similar to a war soldier's. Exactly 10 million years passed, and this swamp was finally about to be leveled. The Celestial Kings from all corners gathered around it. Although the area was still astonishingly large, the swamp was only about 1.5 kilometers in size. There was a piece of land just ahead, but with the thickening mist, it could not be seen very clearly. All the Celestial Kings were very excited as they had finally completely emptied the swamp after another day's work, and now they could proceed unobstructed. Ha! When they stepped onto this piece of dry land, the fog dissipated, and they could see things within a 0.5 kilometers range. They saw that there were a few large graves erected sporadically around the area. Going by this calculation, there should be more large graves after the fog. The total number would be absolutely staggering. These tombs were enormous. The tombstones alone measured up to 300 meters in height, and the burial mound itself was like a hill, exuding a strong, oppressive, menacing feeling. There were so many tombs? Which one was the ancient tomb? Everyone, the ancient tomb is in the centermost area. We need everyone to work together to clear a path towards it. There are still some minor hurdles here. Desolate Moon appeared, and stood at the forefront. Friend Desolate Moon, please lead the way, everyone said. Those who are willing to follow my lead to the ancient tomb can come along with me. However, there are opportunities in every tomb here the young ones may wish to explore, Desolate Moon said. Where there are opportunities, there will also be dangers lurking. Make sure to stay alert and proceed with caution. Everyone was taken by surprise. Desolate Moon's strength was absolutely incomparable, and yet he showed such hesitation. It simply wasn't the way an elite would normally behave. This person was absolutely too mysterious. After speaking, Desolate Moon strode forward, while a large number of 9 heavenly celestial kings looked at each other, and began trailing behind him. No one believed that Desolate Moon could have set a trap, because who could have managed to pass through such a terrifying swamp? Even if Desolate Moon had any malicious intention, he could only use what was originally laid out here to target them. Therefore, the safest way would actually be to follow Desolate Moon. With so many 9th Heaven Celestial Kings working together, even a first-tier Heavenly Venerate would feel trepidation. Besides, should Desolate Moon be telling the truth, and the remaining 6 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll were really hidden here, then they needed to follow him all the more. The crowd of 9th Heaven Celestial Kings left, but told the rest to be cautious, and not get involved in conflicts rashly. There were too many second-generation young masters here, all of them short-tempered and arrogant. Should a fight break out, either side would let up until they fought to the death. Brother Long, what should we do? Zhao Shuang asked Ling Han in a low voice. His life was in Ling Han's hands, and that had dissipated all his temper long ago. Ling Han's reply came with a sweeping glance. I naturally want to go into those ancient tombs and take a look. There wouldn't be any good prospects in following Desolate Moon. With so many 9th Heaven Celestial Kings around, Ling Han wouldn't even be able to get any leftovers. However, if Desolate Moon was telling the truth, and there were indeed opportunities in the other ancient tombs, then Ling Han might as well try his luck there. After 10 million years, not only had Ling Han advanced his cultivation to the peak stage of the 4th heaven, he had also completely mastered and merged the 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scrolls. His battle prowess had naturally improved further as well. Ling Han was confident that as long as a 9th Heaven Celestial King didn't make a move, even 8th Heaven Celestial Kings wouldn't be able to stop him. Of course, he still would not be able to defeat such an opponent if hadn't reached that monstrous level of power necessary to be able to overlook the power gap of 4 whole cultivation levels. However, As long as I advance into the 5th heaven and add the divine demon sword, I can definitely fight equally against an 8th heaven celestial king one. Even if 9th heaven celestial kings decide to make a move, I will still be able to escape easily. Ling Han smiled. After so many years, he was finally about to reach the pinnacle in terms of regulations, reaching the strongest level in the traditional sense. Follow me, said the Ain River Celestial King. As soon as the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings had left the scene, he was the undisputed leader of the younger generation. Yang Shaoling had no objection, and when Zhao Shuang saw that Ling Han also had no objection, he naturally would not be objecting either. Let's go then. Chapter 2599 Defeated in 10 Strikes. Chapter 2599 Defeated in 10 Strikes. When Wang Dongsun's words fell, a 6th Heaven Celestial King walked out. The Ain River Celestial King immediately frowned. Aside from himself, the strongest in their group were 3 4th Heaven Celestial Kings, and they were Ling Han, a Yuan, and Yang Shaoling, respectively. It was impossible that any of the 3 of them could be a match for he. Could it be that he would have to fight in the very first battle? But if he did not step out, that would only result in horrible defeat. He stepped out. I alone am enough. He bared his teeth in a grin. If you can withstand 10 strikes from me, I'll count it as your win. The Ain River Celestial King almost exploded in fury. I am a 7th Heaven Celestial King monarch tier, and you are but at the 6th heaven. Now you're actually saying that you will defeat me in 10 strikes. Where did you get this courage and confidence from? He calmed down abruptly, and stated calmly. Fine then. I really wish to see how you will defeat me within 10 strikes. He clasped his hands behind his back. Easily. Absolute nonsense. The Ain River Celestial King moved, launching an offensive at he. He smiled slightly, and moved to counterattack. It was clear that he was inferior by a cultivation level, yet was completely unafraid of battling the Ain River Celestial King. Pun! The 2 of them exchanged a blow. At the same time, their bodies shuddered before taking a few steps back. Tang, tang, tang. They both took 7 steps back before they steadied their footing again. Their exchange had actually resulted in a tie. This? On the side of Ghost King's city, everyone looked shocked. This was inconceivable. A 6th Heaven Celestial King actually did not fall into a disadvantage in a clash with a 7th Heaven Celestial King. It should be known that the Ain River Celestial King was also a monarch tier at that. Zhao Shuang couldn't help but turn to look towards Ling Han. Aside from Ling Han, there actually were other such monstrous freaks. The Ain River Celestial King's expression was cool. You do indeed have some slight strength, but don't even think of being capable of defeating me within 10 strikes. Oh, then let's put it to the test. He continued to move. With him tapping out a finger, boundless brilliance dazzled their eyes. The 9 Transformations Divine Scroll! Everyone felt a familiar wave. By now, there was practically no one that did not cultivate the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, but the advancement of every single person was completely different. There were some dumb and rash people that had not managed to master even a single part of the Divine Scroll, but those with good aptitude had completed this step. Monarch tier elites were already cultivating the second part, and had even begun to meld the 2 parts together. Yet the might of this blow from he had far surpassed the level of having fused 2 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll together, and was of the strength of having fused all 3 parts together. What kind of aptitude was this? This was really too astonishing. Even the Ain River Celestial King's expression shifted. He was a monarch tier, but he was still in the midst of fusing the 2 parts of 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, yet not only had the other party completed this step, he had even fused all 3 parts of the Divine Scroll into one. In comparison, the Ain River was basically trash. He was internally stunned, yet forcefully suppressed this shock. So what about it? He still had the advantage of a single cultivation level, after all. How could this gap be so easily compensated? 3 in tap! With a light exclamation, his index, middle, and ring fingers formed a strange gesture, and stabbed towards he. There was a black shadowy light entwined around the 3 fingers, bearing a cold feeling of eeriness. This was a powerful move, and had been further boosted with the 9 transformations divine scroll, so its might was increased. Pun! The 2 of them exchanged another blow, but they were still both sent backwards. It was hard to determine who was stronger between the 2 of them. He exclaimed lightly, and his figure flashed. Waving both fists in fury, he exuded a grand and magnificent feeling. It was clear that his battle prowess was equal to the Ain River Celestial King's, but the aura he exuded was incredibly domineering, as if he could crush the Ain River Celestial King. This was an incomparable confidence, and it was that unreasonable, overwhelming his opponent in terms of presence. Everyone was sure that if this was a battle of equal cultivation levels, he would definitely be capable of defeating the Ain River Celestial King within 10 strikes. But if there was a gap of a single cultivation level, how could this be achieved? 3 strikes, 4 or 5. The 2 of them battled intensely. He indeed had a slight advantage, but to speak of defeating the Ain River Celestial King in the next few strikes, this was still too far away. 8 strikes, 9, and there was only 1 strike left. He suddenly shouted loudly, and his whole person suddenly shrank greatly, but one of his fists became bigger many times over. It was enshrouded in green light, with multiple seals flickering within. His aura suddenly soared to an unmatchable height. He threw out this punch, which descended harshly. Pun! A loud bang rang out, and the Ain River Celestial King was visibly sent flying. He opened his mouth, and a gust of blood spurted out. He forcefully turned himself around, and landed on the ground. His feet stood steady, but his figure was trembling slightly. His whole face had instantly turned completely red, and there was actually blood seeping from the corners of his eyes. This was due to his having forcefully suppressed the blood that had been about to escape from his mouth, but the impact that he sustained was really too great. It was actually flowing out of his eyes, and this made the situation become even more frightening. Though the Ain River Celestial King was still standing, and could still fight, everyone was aware that he had already lost. True enough, defeat in 10 strikes. He took a deep breath as well. In the last strike, he had used an ultimate move. Though he had defeated the Ain River Celestial King, to him, it was also an extremely great depletion. There was no way he could use it continuously. With this inhalation of air, his body also puffed up, as if his body was being inflated with air. You really can't withstand a single blow. Wang Dongsun laughed loudly, seeming extremely proud. The people from Ghost King's city could say nothing in response. What else could be done when one had inferior skills? If it really came down to a battle, they would only be facing a one-sided massacre. Ling Han did not interfere. What did this have to do with him? He swept an eye over the masses, and then pointed a finger at one person. You, tell me about that Li Long, and not the slightest bit should be hidden from me. That person adhered to the Ain River Celestial King, and was a second Heaven Celestial King. Though he very much wanted to stay stubborn, and put on a fine performance of loyalty in front of his master, when he saw that cold, expressionless face of He, his heart jolted. Hurriedly, he blurted out all he knew about the topic. He humphed. Pa, he sent out a palm strike, and killed that person with brute force. Knowing nothing, what use are you? You! The Ain River Celestial King was infuriated, and tossed a glare at him. Do you too want to die? He's eyes were menacing, the gaze he directed at Ain River Celestial Chief filled with killing intent. The Ain River Celestial King clenched his fists tightly, but still withheld himself from exploding in fury. To say nothing of the fact that there were still 2 Sixth Heaven Celestial Kings here, as long as he joined forces with Wang Dongsun, they would be able to kill him in a short while. He could choose to flee, but if so, what was the point of putting up a brave front at this moment? Let's go! Wang Dongsun waved a hand, and they walked towards the ancient tomb first. Only when they had all disappeared did everyone finally sigh in relief. They could feel a cold sweat covering their entire bodies. Just now, they had really been a line away from death. If it had really resulted in a battle, then most likely everyone else aside from the Yin River Celestial King and Yuan would have had to die. Are we still going in? Someone asked. We are. The Yin River Celestial King squeezed out through clenched teeth. Though our strength is inferior to the other parties, when contending for fated opportunities inside an ancient site, it is not just pure strength that means that you will be the one who has the last laugh. He could not swallow this grudge. Since he could not match the other party, they would just have to defeat them in terms of contending for the treasures. Everyone felt uneasy, but since the Yin River Celestial King had spoken, they could only obey him. Otherwise, given they were all just second heaven or third heaven celestial kings, they would only be bullied here without the protection of the Yin River Celestial King. Humph, what is there to fear? The Yin River Celestial King remarked in displeasure, and led the way forwards. Ling Han was filled with enthusiasm, and walked on after him. Chapter 2600 Entering the Tomb. Chapter 2600 Entering the Tomb. The others followed suit, and entered the ancient tomb as well. Though this burial mound looked like a hill from the outside, the passageway inside was only wide enough for around 5 people to pass through at the same time. Its height was around 3 meters, with stairs that led all the way down. This was clearly a hill-like burial mound, but why were the stairs going downwards? Everyone did not know what the reason was. In any case, this staircase was designed just like this, and their only option was to just walk onwards. It was very dark here, but it did not affect their visibility. As long as there weren't any unique regulations in place, pure darkness had completely no effect on celestial kings. There were a particularly large number of turns here. The staircase was only about 30 meters long at most, and then it was the end. They had to take a turn and continue downwards. After walking for a while, they suddenly stopped, and saw traces of blood on the ground. Celestial King blood, they immediately said. Celestial King blood was too unique, bearing a unique kind of pressure. Celestial Kings naturally could distinguish it with a single glance. A battle had taken place here, and a Celestial King had bled. Immediately, a strong feeling of alertness rose up in them. Had the Celestial King wounded here been attacked by someone else, or by something, here? Inside an ancient tomb, it was possible that there were traps, formations, and monsters. If you were careless and rash in here, there would be no point in blaming others even if you really did die. You were purely asking for it. A few more turns later, there were more and more smears of blood on the ground. In fact, there were even cut-off limbs. The scene was extremely bloody. And? Ling Han stopped, and picked up a few strands of black hair. This hair was very coarse, and definitely did not belong to a human. The Yin River Celestial King stopped suddenly, and said very impatiently, "Don't just stand around there. Let's go quickly." In the first place, he was already angered, and now Ling Han was actually loitering around here, which displeased him greatly. What's so interesting about it? Isn't it just a few strands of hair? A Celestial King asked. This was one of the Yin River Celestial King's lackeys. Since his master was angered now, he naturally had to take the chance to perform. Don't think that you have discovered some kind of clue. There are many beast-type Celestial Kings, another Celestial King said. Ling Han ignored them, and merely looked at the black hairs in his hands. They gave him a very strange feeling. I was talking to you. The 2 Celestial Kings that had previously rebuked him moved at the same time, grabbing out at Ling Han. Ling Han casually pressed down a hand. Pung pung, the 2 of them were sent flying backwards, crashing heavily into the wall. Instantly blood spurted madly from their mouths as half the bones in their bodies were shattered. How dare you! The Yin River Celestial King immediately shouted. Ling Han was nothing but one of Zhao Shuang's lackeys, and he actually dared to attack his people. This was too outrageously bold. This way! Someone suddenly called out, his tone filled with slight urgency. Everyone walked ahead, and saw that a small platform appeared ahead of a few steps on the staircase. There were strange seals drawn on the ground, and it seemed like a formation. Dead bodies lay all over this place. Actually, not many people had died, but this platform itself was not very large. Hence, now that there were 5 or 6 corpses lying around, especially when they had been ripped into pieces that were scattered here and there, they covered the whole platform entirely. Aside from this, there was also a bear-like monster. It was completely covered in black fur, and even had tentacles. It looked extremely disgusting. These are the people who had entered this place the earliest. The Yin River Celestial King did not have the time to call Ling Han to accounts. He frowned. Though he had only seen these people once, with the memory of a celestial king, he naturally would not forget anything or anyone he had seen before. They encountered this monster, then after sacrificing the lives of a few people, they still managed to kill it. Yan Shaoling also analyzed from the sidelines. Ling Han tossed out the black hairs in his hands, and they just happened to land beside that monster. In comparison, one would realize that these black hairs had definitely come from this monster. The battle was extremely intense. However, though we entered very late, our delay was also limited, yet already so many people have died here. This monster should be very vicious. With an ambush, it wounded one person, then it continued to retreat as it fought, and the great battle only took place here. After killing these people, it also killed itself. Everyone made their deductions, and had just about reconstructed the truth of the matter. Where did this monster pop out from? Zhao Shuang asked, his voice shaking. He was but a second heaven celestial king. If he encountered a sudden attack from this kind of monster, wouldn't he be just simply killed? We are not the first group. The ambushes that lie ahead should have already been activated, the Yin River Celestial King said. Entering later had its benefits as well, for there would be people who entered earlier helping them to avoid the traps ahead. He glanced at Ling Han, and did not continue to flip out. This place was already exuding an air of great danger, so it was not appropriate to cause internal strife at this point in time. It would not be too late to deal with this person in the future. Follow me, and be careful. He led the way ahead, and everyone followed behind him. It was very dark and dead silent in here. Whether it was their breathing or their footsteps, only the slightest effort could cause a very large sound. They continued to make turns endlessly. Not too long later, they discovered traces of another battle. Dismembered limbs lay all over, and they discovered the corpse of another black-furred bear monster not too far ahead. Near here, there was another small platform, and there were formation patterns drawn on it as well. However, none of them could recognize what it was. It seems like the appearance of this kind of monster is related to this platform. None of them were stupid, and they immediately came to this deduction. They continued to advance, and true enough, the third place where a battle had taken place was still nearby a platform. Some of them wanted to give up. It was too dangerous here, and even celestial kings had bled. They did not feel safe at all. They were all second-generation young masters, and knew how to contend with each other for their pride, but they had a greater fear of death. Who among them had really suffered before, and how many of them would truly have roamed the border between life and death before? Yet the Yin River Celestial King did not agree. He was filled with enthusiasm, determined to find the fated opportunity here. After walking for a while longer, they came to another small platform after a turn, but there were staircases heading downwards on either side of the small platform. In other words, there was now a fork in the path. Everyone looked towards the Yin River Celestial King to see what he would say. We go right. He chose a path. They went through the stairway on the right, and there was another fork in the path not long after. We'll take right again. The Yin River Celestial King squeezed out through clenched teeth. Forks in the path appeared endlessly, as if this was a labyrinth. However, everyone did not feel any changes in space. Thus, it should be that this was just a situation wherein there were a lot of forked paths, and not a genuine labyrinth. Otherwise, that would be too easy to break through. After a considerably long time, they finally reached the end. A burial chamber appeared here, and compared with the small hill-like burial mounds outside, it was pitifully small, but it was still the size of an average house. Right in the center of the burial chamber, there lay a stone casket. There wasn't the slightest bit of dust on this casket. Could it be that we have just bumped into the fated opportunity like this? Everyone exclaimed in shock. Ordinarily, if there were any opportunities inside a burial chamber, that would definitely have to be funerary objects. Those definitely had to be located inside the coffin. We open the casket! The Yin River Celestial King declared without any hesitation. To them, a dead Celestial King would also be fertilizer, so how could they possibly have any reservations about disturbing the dead? I'll do it! A second Heaven Celestial King leaped out, immediately going to open the casket. He had just laid his hand on the casket when the whole stone casket suddenly shone. A seal lit up, blasting towards that Celestial King. Suppress! That second Heaven Celestial King roared, throwing a punch to meet the blast of the seal. Pun! The might of this seal was extraordinarily great. With a single strike, that second Heaven Celestial King was sent flying, and he crashed heavily into the wall. A fountain of bloody mist gushed out, and he fell from the wall. In an instant, he had become extremely weak. Chapter 2601 Opening the Casket. Chapter 2601 Opening the Casket. There are restrictions! Zhao Xuan exclaimed. These naturally were pointless words. How could it be that it was a ghost that had attacked the man? The others could only muse inwardly due to their reservations regarding Zhao Xuan's identity, but the Yin River Celestial King and Yang Shaoling both tossed a disdainful glance at Zhao Xuan. You really are too cowardly. How humiliating! Zhao Xuan was completely unconcerned. After falling into submission to Ling Han, he no longer wanted any pride. It was enough for him to keep living. The restrictions are quite powerful too. The Yin River Celestial King walked forwards. Let me try. He, too, stretched out a hand to touch it. The casket lit up with magnificent brilliance once more, and it manifested into a seal that blasted towards the Yin River Celestial King. Pun! He took this blow head-on, and couldn't help but take a number of steps back, his expression appearing slightly ugly. Everyone now had a definite understanding of how powerful the restrictions were. The Yin River Celestial King could take the restrictions head-on, but it was also extremely straining for him. We cannot apply brute force, the Yin River Celestial King said. Everyone nodded in agreement. There were no prospects for applying brute force at all. But this also convinced them that there were definitely treasures concealed within this casket. Everyone gathered around, studying it closely. Restrictions were a branch off from formations, and to put it simply, formations were a manifestation of regulations. Thus, to celestial kings, there were no formations that could not be broken through in this world. The only difference was how much time it would take. They were very rushed. Though they were the first to find this place, it did not mean that others would not come here. But in truth, a very long period of time had already passed, yet still no other people appeared, which seemed quite strange. Ling Han was also studying the restriction. Though he was only in the fourth heaven, his mastery of regulations was not inferior to that of the Yin River Celestial King at all. Otherwise, Ling Han's battle prowess could not possibly have been so strong either. Additionally, he had also learned something else from Wally, to look at a problem from a different angle, and his rate of solving the problem would be faster with the combination of two angles. Otherwise, he would not have just used half a year's time previously to break through the restrictions laid down by the Azure Ghost Celestial King. Ling Han exerted time acceleration effects on himself. This was an ability that 99% of Celestial Kings could not possibly be equipped with. It was equivalent to him being 1,000 times faster than everyone else. Hence, only a day later, Ling Han had come to a conclusion. He moved, and pressed down a hand on the casket. Scram! The Yin River Celestial King moved. He was filled with displeasure. He was presently trying to break through the formations, yet Ling Han actually dared to disturb him. This really was outrageously bold. He thought too highly of himself. Ling Han clenched a fist and parried the blow. Ping! The power of the two clashed together, and instantly activated the restrictions of the casket. A ray of light shot out, splitting into two streaks which blasted towards Ling Han and the Yin River Celestial King, respectively. Pun! Both Ling Han and the Yin River Celestial King were sent flying backwards by the restrictions. Everyone was greatly shocked. It was not surprising to be sent flying by the restrictions. What was surprising was how Ling Han had not been at a disadvantage when he had exchanged blows with the Yin River Celestial King previously. This was too inconceivable. What kind of monster was he? He could suppress the Yin River Celestial King, but he was at least a 6th Heaven Celestial King. You, a 4th Heaven Celestial King? Even if you have reached the peak stage, this is still extremely ridiculous, and cannot be believed. This person. Could it be that he was even more freakish than he? Yuan looked at Ling Han, a sliver of change taking place in his expression. His gaze also flickered, revealing fighting spirit. The Yin River Celestial King's expression wavered. He stared at Ling Han, his heart filled with shock and extreme disbelief. Just what kind of monster was this? Yet Ling Han did not continue to make a move. He walked forwards, and began to break through the restrictions. These restrictions were not too complicated. Thus, he only took a short while to break through them. Then, the lid of the casket was lifted by his hand. At this moment, everyone could not be concerned about anything else. They all gathered around, stretching out their heads to look. There was a corpse that lay within the casket. It had long since turned to bone, and it was dressed in a suit of armor. However, obvious wounds could still be seen. A number of holes had been torn in the armor, and the bones that corresponded to these holes had also shattered. He should not have died by the immortal's tribulation, but should have rather been killed by an external force. His palms lay crossed upon his chest, and a sword lay beside him. This was a very long sword, and had no sheath. Though his corpse was already corroded, this sword was still glinting brightly. Though it was already broken into halves, it was exuding an incomparable chill. Aside from this, there was nothing else in the casket. Everyone was incredibly disappointed. Where were the treasures they were anticipating? Though this sword looked to be very sharp, it was definitely no celestial tool. Furthermore, it was broken, which made it even more meaningless. After exerting such great effort, all of that was for the sake of a look at this dead body? Who would be so idle to lay down such restrictions on the casket? Wouldn't they just be playing around? Let's go! The Yin River Celestial King humphed. He finally knew that his good luck was really not that good, and the reason why no one had come all this while was probably because there were no small number of such caskets. Everyone was busy breaking through the restrictions. Perhaps one of these caskets really did contain treasure? Chapter 2602 Elites Working Together. Chapter 2602 Elites Working Together. Previously, though Ling Han had been able to exchange blows with him once without falling into a disadvantage, that was because the Yin River had not used full power at all. Was there any need for him to use full power against the puny 4th Heaven Celestial King? Since Ling Han dared to challenge the Yin River, then he could just die. The Yin River Celestial King strode towards Ling Han. As he did, a black liquid was also flowing from within his body, intertwining on the ground and forming a web-like shape. Zhao Shuang was anxious, and hurriedly said, "We are all together. Whatever it is, we can talk it over peacefully. Just talk it over peacefully." If the Yin River Celestial King killed Ling Han, Zhao Shuang would not have any more antidote. In that case, Zhao Shuang would definitely die as well. But if Ling Han killed the Yin River Celestial King, then Zhao Shuang would have allowed his subordinate to commit the crime of actually daring to touch even the beloved disciple of the Azure Ghost Celestial King, and even Zhao Yuani would not be able to save him. Hence, what Zhao Shuang wanted the least was for the two of them to get into a fight. How could the Yin River Celestial King possibly take heed of him? He was determined to kill Ling Han. Previously, how the people from prosperous opening city had provoked him had already angered him greatly, yet he had no means to vent this fury. Now, even his own subordinate dared to leap out and publicly challenge his authority. How could he tolerate this? Kill, he definitely had to kill him. He moved. Wang wang wang. He shot out a palm strike, with 7 black seals solidifying, and he pressed them down on Ling Han. Boom, the liquid on the ground floated, solidified while maintaining a web-like shape, and became akin to a prison that trapped Ling Han within. Ling Han clenched his right hand into a fist, and punched out at empty air. A loud bang rang out, and the black liquid instantly collapsed. The prison crumbled. With a long whistle, Ling Han pushed forwards this fist to continue blasting towards the Yin River Celestial King. Pun! The two of them exchanged another blow, and Ling Han was immediately sent flying backwards. Meanwhile, the Yin River Celestial King clearly had the upper hand in terms of power. He was standing firmly, but his palm had already split apart, blood seeping from it. Looking back on Ling Han, the latter was completely unscathed. This meant that it was indeed the Yin River Celestial King that had the upper hand in terms of power, but it was Ling Han that was slightly superior in terms of destructive power. With this +1 and -1, it was hard to determine who had stronger battle prowess out of the two of them. One could only say that they each had their advantage, and this was a battle wherein the result was hard to predict. 9 Transformations Divine Scroll! Everyone exclaimed in shock. That previous blow from Ling Han had used the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, which boosted its destructive power, and that was how he had managed to wound the Yin River Celestial King with a single strike. Though it could not be considered even light injury, that was not because the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll did not have enough might, but rather because the gap in cultivation levels between the two was too wide. He has fused all 3 parts. This was what caused them the most shock. As it turned out, it was not he that was the only such monster. It had only been 10 million years, and Ling Han had already fused the 3 parts of 9 Transformations Divine Scroll. This was too terrifying. Who exactly are you? The Yin River Celestial King asked darkly. He did not believe that there would be so many freaks in this world, and it was always he that encountered them. Could it be? A name appeared in his mind. But even he did not dare believe it. This was really too outrageously bold, wasn't it? Ling Han broke into a grin, and dragged a hand down his face, revealing another face. Do you recognize me now? He asked. Li Long! Everyone exclaimed in shock. This face was too familiar. Ling Han grinned. His features shifted, and he turned back to his previous appearance. Damn it! The Yin River Celestial King roared in fury. He moved once more, drawing from the regulations of water, and forming a black-colored spear, which he stabbed towards Ling Han. Flowing waters form my spear, penetrating all defense in this world. Ling Han had no intention to draw the divine demon's sword. Previously, in the battle with the Yin River Celestial King, he had only been in the early stage of the 4th heaven, yet now he had attained peak stage. Moreover, he had also cultivated the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, which had further increased his battle prowess. Now he should possess the strength to battle a 7th heaven monarch tier, right? Ling Han raised his fist, and launched an assault against the Yin River Celestial King. Pun! 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 A great battle broke out between them. The space inside here was narrow and cramped. The moment they started fighting, the shock waves from their clash surged in all directions, which was extremely frightening, forcing Zhao Shuang and the others to have no choice but to retreat continuously. They were not even qualified to watch the battle from close quarters. Only Yuan was standing nearby. His eyes were burning brightly, and his hand was already involuntarily gripping his sword. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Ling Han was the only one who had ever defeated him, and this caused his fighting spirit to blaze. He very much wanted to defeat Ling Han so he could prove that he was the true strongest prodigy of this era. Ling Han had no other thoughts in his head. His only thought was to battle. The Yin River Celestial King did not know why Ling Han did not draw the divine demon's sword, but this naturally was more in line with his wishes. Otherwise, he was sure that he would definitely be no match for Ling Han. In the last battle, he had fought Ling Han to a tie. Actually, this made him feel very sullen. His battle prowess definitely surpassed Ling Han's. In fact, he overwhelmed the latter completely, but just because he lacked a celestial tool, he was forced to accept a tie as the result. Now Ling Han actually chose not to use his celestial tool due to his pride. Then, he could blame no one if he was seeking death like this. The Yin River unleashed his full battle prowess, wanting to force Ling Han to the point that the latter wouldn't even have the chance to draw the divine demon's sword. Battle, 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 battle. The two of them unleashed their full battle prowess, fighting an extremely intense battle, and it was hard to decide who was stronger between them. Ling Han couldn't help but admit that a 7th Heaven Monarch tier was still very strong. Without using the divine demon's sword, he would also be able to fight the other to a tie, but to completely suppress him, that was simply impossible. Right at this moment, a flash of sword light streaked past, slicing out towards Ling Han. Yuan had made his move. He was definitely not a despicable character that would take advantage of others, but rather he had no concept of rules at all. Since his fighting spirit was blazing hotly, then he would just attack. As for a fair one-on-one battle, this kind of concept had never existed in his mind. He would not object to others ganging up on him, and now that he was working together with the Yin River Celestial King to fight Ling Han together, he would not feel the slightest bit apologetic, either. Now that Yuan had joined the battle, the pressure Ling Han was under instantly soared. Yuan was a monarch star, and a supreme monarch star at that. His evolution index soared directly to 11. This meant that his natural talent in cultivation was astonishing. That was clear from the moment he attacked. He had fused all 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll together. This had even surpassed the majority of 9th Heaven Celestial Kings. With the boost of a heavenly venerable tier technique, the might of his sword technique was extremely frightening. Thankfully, he had only obtained 3 parts of the divine scroll after all. While that was still strong, it had not reached a level that could not be matched. Ling Han was unafraid. On the other hand, his heroic spirit and excitement burst out. Regulations entwined his fists as he clashed fiercely with the 2 great elites. But no matter how strong and fierce human power was, there was still a limit. The combined might of Yuan and the Yin River Celestial King had already surpassed Ling Han's limit, suppressing him gradually, and he had fallen completely into a disadvantage. Though they had the upper hand, the Yin River Celestial King did not look to be very happy, because he was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure. Ling Han, Yuan, all of them had natural talent that crushed his. Previously, he had been self-content and smug. He was an extremely rare monarch tier of Ghost King City, but now with this comparison, he was practically trash. Yuan's natural talent in cultivation was indeed awesome. After being defeated by Ling Han, he did not become despondent and lose his fighting spirit. Instead, he learned from the lesson and compensated for his own shortcomings. His battle prowess had become even more terrifying than before. Furthermore, he had also reached the peak stage of the 4th heaven, and his rate of advancement was not much slower than Ling Han's. The 2 great elites worked together, especially Yuan, who was extremely proficient in attack. This was his faith. Only when the power of attack was strong enough that he could completely overwhelm his opponent would there be absolutely no need to worry about defense, because he would definitely not be hit. His was a sharp sword, which posed a serious threat to Ling Han. Chapter 2603 Ling Han's Might. Chapter 2603 Ling Han's Might. The Yin River Celestial King was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid at all. Seeing how Yuan's attack was so powerful, he took the initiative to decrease his offensive force. He was now mainly responsible for defense, not only for himself, but also for Yuan, so that Yuan could proceed without reservations. This combination of attack and defense allowed Yuan's battle prowess to be fully unleashed, further suppressing Ling Han. Sword light flashed, and blood spattered. This time Ling Han got injured. Yuan's sword was too fast and too sharp. As long as he remained unsuppressed and with his full battle prowess unleashed, he really was a nightmare for any opponent. Ling Han continuously sustained injuries, and there was blood everywhere. In order to attack unrestrained, they kept on moving while still engaged in fighting. They came to a small platform, which was relatively more spacious. There was a formation drawn on the ground. How was it drawn? Instead of using a brush, this part of the ground was concave. Therefore, when blood was spilled on the ground and naturally flowed into the grooves of the formation, the entire formation suddenly appeared to come alive. When the formation was completely filled with blood, it suddenly emitted a glorious light, and a creature appeared out of nowhere, a black bear-like monster covered with tentacles. This kind of monster had appeared again. Ling Han experienced a strange feeling as the aura emanating from this monster felt so familiar to him. Shua, as soon as the monster appeared, it waved its tentacles and attacked Ling Han, Yun, and the Yin River Celestial King. Ling Han humphed, avoiding the attacks of Yun and the Yin River Celestial King, and then threw a punch at the tentacles of the black monster bear. Pun! With just a single punch, the tentacles of the black monster immediately burst. They could not even withstand a single blow. However, the tentacles turned into countless pieces that scattered outwards in all directions. Ling Han activated the source power to shield himself from these pieces. Who knew what these things might be? He absolutely did not want them to touch him. On the other side, the Yin River Celestial King also unraveled the attack of the black bear monster. Meanwhile, Yun didn't waste one bit of energy. With a slash of his sword, he attacked fiercely. The black bear monster made another move, and it was another attack directed at Ling Han and the others. For Yun, the attack didn't matter anyway, since the Yin River Celestial King would subdue it, but for Ling Han, it was akin to having one more opponent. He was already in a disadvantageous position, so an additional opponent naturally increased the pressure on him. Moreover, the formation continued to operate, and another black bear monster appeared. Ling Han shouted furiously. He already fully understood the level of his strength, so there was no need to continue being beaten down on. The divine demon's sword was drawn. A cold light flashed, and sword chi surged out. Pooh! 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 Even this incomparably strong wall could not withstand the sword chi of the divine demon's sword, and there immediately emerged countless marks several inches in depth. Ling Han started to counterattack. Pooh! The sword chi swept out, and the black bear monster that had just appeared was immediately cut in half. This kind of thing had no concept of defense at all. Its destructive power was terrifying, but it had zero defenses. As long as one's battle prowess was overwhelmed, killing it was relatively simple. As soon as the sword was drawn, it could no longer be hindered. The divine demon's sword slashed again. Pooh! The first black bear monster was also cut in half. Ding! Ling Han's sword clashed against Yun's sword, and Ling Han saw a small particle immediately appear on his opponent's sword. The divine demon's sword was so sharp, how could anything that was not divine metal be able to withstand it? But Yun's sword was also remarkable. It was not snapped in a single slash. Yun's ability to adapt was astonishingly fast. When his sword was parried in one slash, he immediately retracted the sword and stabbed again. Ding! 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 He stabbed with his sword several hundred times in a row, but this offensive was completed in only an instant. This required the support of extremely powerful body art. Yun's body art might be incomparable to Ling Han's, but compared to other celestial kings, he was absolutely much stronger. Ling Han returned like for like, blocking every one of Yun's strikes with great speed. Die! The Yin River Celestial King shouted as he, too, attacked, wanting to use this chance to kill Ling Han. He concentrated the regulations of water, which took the form of a black dragon that pierced towards Ling Han. Ling Han stared coldly at the Yin River Celestial King, his gaze full of disdain. Are you even worthy of being my opponent? He could regard Yun as an opponent, but the Yin River Celestial King? He really wasn't worthy of it. No matter how strong his battle prowess was, he was not worthy of Ling Han's notice. He exclaimed softly, and directed his attack towards the Yin River Celestial King. The divine demon's sword glowed. This was an object that surpassed any celestial weapon. Although it hadn't reached the level of heavenly venerate tool yet, its power was unparalleled. Just the sword chi alone was extremely terrifying, and it could pose a great threat even to Celestial King-level defense. How would the Ain River Celestial King dare to face it head-on? He had already suffered once before. Thus, he instantly took multiple steps backwards. Yun kept on attacking, but Ling Han was actively channeling the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. For a short period of time, his defense was comparable to that of divine metal. Therefore, it didn't matter how many times Yun cut him. Ling Han set his eyes on the Ain River Celestial King. He was going to kill this person. The Ain River Celestial King blocked the attacks. However, a Ling Han who didn't have the divine demon sword in his hand was no weaker than him. Now with Ling Han wielding a celestial tool, how was the Ain River any match? He had blocked several attacks, but was already severely injured. He gritted his teeth, and immediately turned around with the intention to run away. As for Yun, he couldn't care less. Do you think you can run? Ling Han unleashed the regulations of space, pressing down with his left hand. Bang! The Ain River Celestial King seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall. Although he smashed through it, his speed was greatly reduced. Ling Han caught up and continued to deliver sword strikes. With the boost of the 9 transformations divine scroll, the divine demon sword became even more terrifying. The Ain River Celestial King shouted loudly. He was unwilling to die here. He was a monarch tier, and he had a great chance to become a 9th Heaven Celestial King in the Celestial King graveyard. There was even a chance for him to become a heavenly venerate in the future, although this chance was extremely slim. How could such a prodigy die here? He wanted to escape. He would not come out again until he had attained the 9th heaven of the Celestial King tier. How would Ling Han let him go? All kinds of regulations were continuously used by his hands. The flow of time slowed down, the space was frozen, and gravity was like a mountain. It reached the extent that the Ain River Celestial King had no chance to escape at all. Despite Yun's attacks being equally fierce, the activated defense of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll caused Yun to be unable to do anything against Ling Han at all. Unless the sword in his hand was replaced by a celestial weapon, he couldn't pose a threat to Ling Han's physique. The Ain River Celestial King gritted his teeth and turned back around. Now he could only go all out in the fight, otherwise he would really die here for sure. Die! He rushed towards Ling Han, believing that Ling Han's defense couldn't be so perfect that it could last indefinitely. As long as he survived this wave of Ling Han's attacks, he would be able to join forces with Yun to suppress Ling Han again. This wasn't a bad idea, but he had overestimated the strength of his force combined with Yun's, and underestimated the power of Ling Han and the divine demon sword. Ling Han strongly suppressed the attacks. Every time the divine demon sword slashed out, it would cause blood to spatter like a fountain. What was the divine demon sword? It was a celestial tool, and was even proceeding in the direction of becoming a heavenly venerate tool. Its destructive power was too terrifying. Being slashed by it was definitely not as simple as sustaining physical injuries. The terrifying murderous aura would actually invade all parts of the body. The Ain River Celestial King coughed up blood. The divine demon sword had already damaged his internal organs to bits and pieces, and he could not help but vomit blood. He was in great pain. He had a feeling that if he continued to fight like this, he wouldn't need to be struck down by divine demon sword at all, as all the accumulated injuries he sustained could cause him to die at any time. Why hadn't Ling Han's defenses dissipated yet? The person I want to kill won't be able to escape, Ling Han said menacingly. Chapter 2604 Interception. Chapter 2604 Interception. To the Ain River Celestial King, these words sounded like they were filled with mockery. Previously, when he had moved to save Tang Yuan in Ghost King's city, Ling Han had said similar words as well. In the end, Ling Han had killed Tang Yuan right in front of his eyes. And now, Ling Han said these words yet again. The Ain River Celestial King's fury could not be restrained, yet he could not show the slightest bit of temper. His only wish was to save himself. He moved out with full power, fighting for his life. Within 10 moves I will take your life, Ling Han declared coldly, his voice carrying not even the slightest sliver of emotion, yet being filled with absolute certainty. The eyes of the Yin River Celestial King spat flames. Previously, he had also said that he could defeat him in 10 strikes, and now Ling Han was saying that he would kill him in 10 moves, which filled him with incomparably fury. In the eyes of these two, was he really that weak? He was not weak. He was not weak. He was not weak. The Yin River Celestial King roared in rage. He struck madly, wanting to prove that he was not that weak. 1 strike, 2. 9 strikes, and he was left with the last move. Pooh! A flash of sword light streaked past. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and the Yin River Celestial King stumbled. He lowered his head, looking down at his chest. A bloody hole had appeared there, and it was located at the precise position of his heart. The divine demon sword had pierced one of his vital points. The Yin River Celestial King's expression was filled with confusion. He raised his head to look at Ling Han. He wanted to open his mouth and say something, yet could not say a single word. Pa! He collapsed onto the ground, signs of life rapidly leaving his body. True enough, killed in 10 strikes. Ling Han turned his head to look back at Yun, eyes menacing. The pressure he was emanating was extremely frightening. An ordinary 4th Heaven Celestial King would probably experience a breakdown when being the target of such eyes. Yet Yun was completely unaffected. Neither did he become shaken and lose his determination because of the death of the Yin River Celestial King. With a loud battle cry, he delivered a series of stabs with his sword. His power was still violent, and merely concentrated on attack, and not on defense, as if he was fighting for his life. Ling Han laughed loudly. He charged out with the divine demon sword, and clashed forcefully with Yun. Ding! 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 The sound of swords clashing continued endlessly. The two of them exchanged blows, but after only about 100 strikes, the two of them clashed one more time, and the sword in Yun's hand shattered, turning into thousands of pieces. For a non-celestial tool to clash head-on with the divine demon sword for such a long time was something considerably extraordinary. Ling Han's sword stopped, halting at Yun's neck. "Why do you not kill me?" Yun asked. As long as the divine demon sword continued just a slight bit further, with the destructive power of a celestial tool, his vital signs would be instantly extinguished. Ling Han withdrew his sword. "I anticipate how you will mature and battle with me." Facing a bloodthirsty psychopath like the Yin River Celestial King, Ling Han naturally would kill him without any mercy. Yun, however, could only be considered a battle-thirsty madman, and it would be a pity to kill him. There would come a day when this kind of person could attempt to break through to the heavenly venerable tier, and he deserved a better end. Even if he was to die, he should die on the battlefield against Hysteria, and not in this Celestial King graveyard. Yun stared at Ling Han for a while, and then said, "I will definitely surpass you." Ling Han laughed loudly. "To surpass me is not something that can be done with mere words." Yun nodded, and withdrew his sword before striding off. He decided that he would focus wholeheartedly on polishing his sword technique in the future before he considered anything else. Ling Han walked up the steps, but realized that Yang Shaoling and the others had long since disappeared without a trace. True. They had all discovered that he was Li Long, so how could they dare to stay behind? No matter how many lives they had, it was not enough for him to take. Of course, that was with the exception of Zhao Shuang. He was poisoned, and thought that his life was still grasped in Ling Han's hands. Naturally, he did not dare to leave. Ling Han walked over and patted Zhao Shuang's shoulder. "You can go now." Zhao Shuang thought that he was being sarcastic, and hurriedly shook his head endlessly. "Brother Long, what are you saying now? How could I possibly betray you?" His expression was filled with loyalty. Ling Han raised a fist. "If you still aren't going to scram, I will crush your head into bits." With this threat from him, Zhao Shuang's face turned pale in terror. He quickly turned around and ran off. Internally, he was naturally in great panic. Without an antidote, wouldn't that just mean death, only a few days later? He ran for a while, and naturally did not want to just give up like this. He hurriedly returned to find Ling Han again, but what trace of Ling Han was there left? He felt apprehensive, but after 3 days, he discovered no changes had taken place in his body. He was still alive and kicking by the 4th day, and finally realized that he had fallen for Ling Han's trick. Ling Han had already said before that he had not had any eternal antidote. Zhao Xuan had initially thought that was just a joke. He had not expected that it was actually a fact. Ling Han indeed did not have an eternal antidote, because Zhao Xuan was not poisoned at all. Zhao Xuan was very furious as he had actually been deceived by Ling Han for more than 10 million years. But upon further thought, the person he had been facing was Ling Han, the most notorious bringer of calamity of Ghost King's city. To be able to spend so much time with him and still be living, wasn't this great luck already? With such thoughts, he immediately felt at ease. He decided that he would return to being a well-behaved second-generation young master when he returned, and never play around again. Ling Han walked slowly, searching everywhere for caskets. There were some caskets which already had their restrictions unraveled. There were some that had not, but the weapons inside hadn't been taken at all. They were neither celestial tools nor divine metal. Moreover, they were damaged. Who would actually want them? Ling Han was pleased. He toured one burial chamber after another, and his spoils were really heavy. Several days later, he had finally completed a whole tour of this tomb, and opened all the caskets. Then, he very happily came out. He had just walked out of the large tomb. When he arrived outside, he saw that a group of people were just standing guard at the entrance. Weren't they from prosperous opening city? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and saw that one of the second-generation young masters of Ghost King's city had fallen into their hands. Ling Han did not know his name. He had not even bothered to remember. Li Long? He walked out, his hand holding the collar of that second-generation young master. Ling Han stood still and asked, "How can I help you?" "Ha ha!" He tossed that second-generation young master into the air, and then shot out a kick at him. Pang! That second-generation young master turned into a cannonball, careening towards Ling Han. Ling Han sidestepped, and that second-generation young master instantly crashed into the wall behind him. The sound of bones breaking rang out in succession. He turned into a mush of flesh and blood, sliding down onto the ground. The young master had not suffered. When he had kicked him, the latter had already been killed by the terrifying force. A great celestial king had died in such a lowly manner. This was the celestial king graveyard, where there was not much difference between celestial kings and stray dogs. "Or should I call you by another name?" He withdrew his foot. "Ling Han!" Ling Han was internally shocked. How did this person know his name? "What do you mean?" he asked calmly. "No need to deny it. How many people are there in this world that can battle a 7th heaven celestial king while he is only a 4th heaven?" He scoffed. "Even in the world's paramount martial academy, there is probably no other person. There is only you, a man who has such heaven-defying body art." Ling Han looked at he, and then suddenly broke into a grin. "That's right. I am indeed Ling Han." With a thought, his appearance changed, and he regained his real appearance. He asked calmly, "The 3 of you should be from the martial academy, right? Otherwise, it was impossible that they would know so much about him. Furthermore, the feeling that the 3 of them gave him was extremely strong. He had even defeated the Yin River Celestial King within 10 moves. The former definitely was a prodigy of the highest tier of the martial academy." Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "Looking at the 3 of you, it is clear that you were waiting here to intercept me. In other words, you have a grudge against me. In the martial academy, there are only a numbered few supreme monarch stars in 6th heaven. You, probably are Guhi, right?" He had a similar pronunciation, so he should be Guhi 1. Chapter 2605 Breaking Out of the Siege. Chapter 2605 Breaking Out of the Siege. He, or rather Guhi, couldn't help starting as his expression changed drastically. He had never imagined that Ling Han could manage to recognize his true identity despite pitifully little information. However, this was also normal. That was because after Gu He, Xiaoxiong, and Miao Hua had entered into the Celestial King graveyard, they had also rushed all the way to prosperous opening city after hearing of how freakish Ling Han was. That was because they deduced that the person who possessed such freakish battle prowess definitely could only be Ling Han. But when they arrived at prosperous opening city, Ling Han had already set out towards the ancient tomb. Hence, the three of them joined prosperous opening city, and set off together. Their goal was Ling Han. Thus, when they previously encountered the people from Ghost King City, they would ask about Ling Han. They were sure that Ling Han would definitely not give up on such a great opportunity as the ancient tomb. He would definitely find some way to sneak in. True enough, after they came, they saw those people from Ghost King's city flee in panic. Capturing one of them and interrogating him, they found out that Li Long had appeared again, and thus stood guard at this entrance. Wang Dongsun and the others expressed no disagreement. They, too, wanted nothing more than to kill Ling Han. Ling Han, prepare to die! Gu He naturally would not expose his identity in full public. He merely laughed loudly, and then attacked. His strength was much superior as compared to the Yin River Celestial Kings. He was capable of defeating a 7th Heaven Monarch tier within 10 moves. Even though he had used his ultimate technique, this still proved that he was indeed powerful. Gu He's battle prowess had definitely reached 8th heaven. His palm descended, and boom, even the skies were trembling. This was a terrifying power that was close to the pinnacle power of regulation. Ling Han moved. He could face off against the Yin River Celestial King head-on, but doing so against Gu He still surpassed the maximum limits of his strength. Thankfully, his physique was very strong, so it would not hurt even if he was swept by a little of the aftermath. Gu He delivered several dozen strikes, yet Ling Han managed to dodge all of them. A Celestial King actually wanted to kill another Celestial King? This was a difficult feat. There was a gap of 2 cultivation levels between the two of them, but the gap between their actual battle prowess was a single cultivation level at most. Thus, the difficulty level of Gu He killing Ling Han was extremely high. However, Xiaoxiong and Miao Hua moved. They both walked out, forming a triangular formation, and surrounding Ling Han. Die! These two people moved mercilessly, wanting to kill Ling Han as soon as possible so they could directly extract his spirit. Every single one of them was stronger than Ling Han in terms of battle prowess, and the three of them working together was enough for an intense battle with a peak stage 8th Heaven Celestial King. This was a crushing advantage, which brought enough difficulty for Ling Han. He was struck repeatedly, suffering multiple wounds. And this was still because Ling Han's physique had reached the 6th heaven in level. If it had been anyone else, even if their battle prowess had been equal to his opponent's, they would definitely have been killed by now. With a ding, Ling Han drew the divine demon sword. Do you think you are the only one with a celestial tool? Xiaoxiong and the others sneered. When it came to powerful people like them, who had not previously traveled the most dangerous ancient sites, obtaining a piece of divine metal was no difficult matter. Naturally, they had long since obtained their own celestial tools. To say the least, even if their luck was too bad, and they never managed to get hold of divine metal, the Martial Academy would have given them a piece as a reward after so many years. Wang! 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 Frightening power surged out, and 3 majestic pillars of light shot skywards. Gu He and the others all drew their respective celestial tools, still having an absolute advantage. Wang Dongsun and the others were all watching this heatedly. They were all just second-generation young masters, and though the Celestial King graveyard had no shortage of celestial medicine, there was pitifully little divine metal. Aside from those that Celestial Kings had brought with them when they came here, there was basically no possibility that it could be discovered here. Hence, no matter how much they were favored, it was useless. Even when it came to 9th Heaven Celestial Kings, there were not many that had a celestial tool, what more Wang Dongsun's group. Now, seeing that Ling Han and the others all possessed a celestial tool, how could they not feel jealous? Xiaoxiong and the others were all Supreme Monarch stars. In fact, their evolution index was progressing towards 12. Not only was their battle prowess astonishing, their comprehension abilities were also incredibly frightening. They, too, had fused all 3 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, and had used it in battle, greatly improving their battle prowess. "Today, you must die!" Xiaoxiong declared coldly. The 3 of them joined forces, sealing off all routes of escape for Ling Han. He definitely could not be allowed the slightest possibility of fleeing. Which of the 3 of them was not an absolutely strong prodigy? There had only been legends of how they had won victories against those with superior cultivation levels, yet not only were they using the superiority of 2 cultivation levels to battle a celestial king 1 level lower now, it was the 3 of them working together at that. This was completely abandoning all pride. Undoubtedly, the threat this posed was too great. Ling Han was in a great crisis. The 3 of them working together were much stronger than the team-up of Yuan and the Yin River Celestial King, causing him to bleed very quickly. Furthermore, all 3 of them possessed their own celestial tools. If he was just struck once, it was definitely not something as simple as shedding a little blood. Things couldn't continue like this, or he would die. With a battle cry, Ling Han began trying to break out of the siege. "You want to escape?" Niao Hua struck out with his staff, forcing Ling Han backwards. If Ling Han still managed to escape even with the 3 of them combining forces, they would have no face to show themselves in the future. Ling Han laughed loudly. His fighting spirit was already fully ignited. What others considered impossible, he was determined to accomplish. Wasn't it just the battle prowess of 3 8th Heaven Celestial Kings? There was no way he could win, but breaking out of their siege was definitely no impossible feat. With a loud battle cry, Ling Han began to break out of the siege. As the divine demon sword slashed, he turned into a gust of wind, charging towards Xiaoxiong. Xiaoxiong couldn't help but rage. Ling Han had chosen him as the point to break out. Did he think that he was the easiest to deal with? "Damn it! Fucking damn it! Die!" he shouted in fury, and threw a punch, wanting to send Ling Han back. Yet Ling Han ignored this strike, and forcefully broke out. "Pun!" This punch from Xiaoxiong landed on Ling Han's back, but a light flashed out, and Ling Han was completely unharmed. Instead, he increased the speed of his charge with this punch. Ling Han had taken the initiative to channel the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. His defenses now could not be considered to be at the level of divine metal, but they were definitely not something that an 8th Heaven Celestial King could harm. "This damn defense!" Xiaoxiong humphed. If Ling Han was allowed to simply break out and leave like this, the former would really be humiliated. With a soft exclamation, the spear in his hands pierced out rapidly, the might of a celestial tool fully unleashed. No matter how strong your physique is, what use is there? As long as it hasn't reached the level of divine metal, how could you be capable of blocking the sharpness of a genuine celestial tool? Otherwise, how could celestial tools possibly be so valuable? He started later than the others, and added with how he had helped Ling Han with a punch, there was no way he could have ordinarily caught up to Ling Han. He was aware of this fact as well. Thus, when the power of the spear was fully expended, he pushed forwards fiercely. Pung! The spear flew out of his hands, yet with a burst of 10 times the speed, it pursued after Ling Han. This strike was really too fast. If Ling Han continued on a straight course, he would definitely be struck by the spear, and if he veered off, that would definitely affect his speed, and thus allow Gu He and Niao Hua to catch up to him, and intercept him once more. However, Ling Han's reaction was something no one had expected. He merely twisted his body slightly. Pooh! The spear reached him. Even with his physique, it still could not be blocked. The tip of the spear instantly sank in, but it did not penetrate too deeply, and Ling Han did not even pause in his footsteps. "Return!" Xiaoxiong grasped at empty air, and the spear immediately turned around and returned, bringing with it a fountain of blood, which also caused Ling Han to stumble. However, Ling Han merely released a ferocious roar, and his speed only increased even faster, with him concentrating his full effort on escaping. In this way, Gu He and Niao Hua could not catch up to Ling Han. After he had run far enough, Ling Han turned his head, his eyes sweeping over the faces of Xiaoxiong and the others. His gaze was extremely cold, as if he was looking at 3 dead bodies. Chapter 2606 Another Great Battle. Chapter 2606 Another Great Battle. Ling Han did not say anything, but anyone who saw his expression could guess what he wanted to convey. And that was that he was definitely going to kill Xiaoxiong and the others. This seemed a bit amusing. Xiaoxiong and the others were all 6th Heaven Celestial Kings whose battle prowess soared directly into 8th Heaven Celestial King tier, and with their combined might, they could even match the battle prowess of a peak stage 8th Heaven Celestial King tier. To kill them, one had to possess the 9th Heaven's battle prowess at least, right? Yet Ling Han was only a 4th Heaven Celestial King, so what basis did he have for such confidence? But a chill rose up in the hearts of Xiaoxiong and the others, and even their souls were trembling. Why had they entered the Celestial King graveyard to snipe Ling Han? Firstly, they coveted the secret of Ling Han's powerful body art, and wanted to take it for themselves, and secondly, they were wary of Ling Han's potential. If they did not stop him, there would eventually come a day when he would surpass them. The 3 of them immediately strengthened their resolve. The more things were like this, the more they were determined to kill Ling Han. Humph, even if you have escaped our encirclement, so what? Where will you be able to escape with such severe injuries? Niao Hua asked menacingly. Even if we must chase you to the ends of the world, we will still kill you. Xiaoxiong expressed his stand on the matter as well. Die. Gu He's remark was very simple, but a single die also expressed his thoughts completely. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. The 3 of them set off in pursuit at the same time. Ling Han turned around, regulations of space spreading out. Wide-range spatial transportation could not be done here, but movement within a smaller range was still possible. At the same time, he was also causing trouble for these 3 great elites, slowing them down. There's no way you can escape! Xiaoxiong and the others locked their respective divine sense on Ling Han. Ling Han burst out in speed. Though he was inferior by 2 cultivation levels, his command over the regulations of space allowed him to possess even higher speed, and adding how there were many ancient graves here, with fog obstructing visibility, he soon threw the 3 pursuers off his trail. He entered into a large tomb, found a corner, and then entered into the celestial guest's residence, where he immediately began healing his injuries. This time, his injuries were extremely severe, especially after that last strike when he was injured by the celestial tool. Though it missed his vital points, terrifying destructive power was still gushing in his body, and this caused 1/3 of his body to directly deteriorate. Not only that, this kind of deterioration was still spreading towards the rest of his body. If it were not for the fact that he had used source power to wrap around his heart, he would probably have died long ago. Ling Han ingested an alchemical pill. He did not tell the women about his present state, or the Empress might directly charge out to commit murder. That would be too terrible. Xiaoxiong and the others would definitely not harm the Empress, but the consequences would only be worse. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, wanting to remove the deteriorating power left behind by the celestial tool. The reason why celestial tools were celestial tools was their terrifying destructive power. Anything that was forged from divine metal would have this kind of ability, and the only difference was that after the celestial tool was forged, it could be activated. It could then battle by itself, unlike an ordinary weapon that was forged from divine metal, which definitely needed a user to wield it. Judging from the end result, with Ling Han sustaining this strike, whether it was a celestial tool or a divine metal weapon, the damage caused was more or less equal. The indestructible heaven scroll channeled endlessly inside his body, slowly expelling the destructive power of the celestial tool. The pace was really slow. Theoretically speaking, divine metal itself was already at the height of the 9th heaven celestial king tier. If one was struck directly, it would be equivalent to having been struck by a 9th heaven celestial king. However, The injury would not immediately explode, but rather cause damage slowly. Especially when the injury was in the proximity of vital areas. One could not completely remove the whole area, so this was extremely troublesome. Thankfully, the indestructible heaven scroll was the precious technique of a heavenly venerate that was superior to regulations. Even if Ling Han could not fully unleash the might of the indestructible heaven scroll due to the limits of his own cultivation level, he was still the source of its power, and the destructive power of a celestial tool was limited. As long as there was enough time, he would definitely be able to eliminate this destructive power. Ling Han exerted time acceleration effects on himself so he could shrink down the time needed for recovery. He spent more than 500 years, and in reality, around half a year's time had passed. Ling Han finally healed the injury caused by the celestial tool completely. Ling Han stepped out of the celestial guest residence. He wanted to accumulate the final bit of power through cultivation in preparation for breaking through to the fifth heaven, and he toured the large tomb at the same time, letting the divine demon sword devour enough divine metal so it could advance further. Whether it was Ling Han advancing into fifth heaven, or the divine demon sword advancing to the level of a heavenly venerate tool, it would allow his battle prowess to undergo a complete transformation. When he battled Xiaoying Xiong and the others again, he would not have to flee in such a sorry state. I will definitely seek a reckoning for this debt. Ling Han continued to open coffins within this large tomb. Every time he opened a coffin, he would apologize to the dead. After extracting the divine metal, he would carefully close the coffin back again. Having disturbed their eternal slumber, he felt guilt towards them. All of a sudden, Ling Han sensed an extremely dangerous aura, and immediately drew the divine demon's sword, which he then raised before him. Shio, a flash of sword light streaked past, slicing towards him, the sword chi shattering the heavens. Ding! Ling Han struck out with his sword, parrying this strike, but his figure was still forced backwards. Ping! He only stopped after crashing into the wall behind him. I have already said it before, there is no way you can escape. The person who had struck revealed himself. It was Gu He. He walked out, sword in hand and aura blazing. With his present battle prowess that was close to the peak stage of the eighth heaven, he was practically invincible here. How has he found me? This thought flashed through Ling Han's head, but he still chose to break out without a moment's hesitation. The walls here were too thick, which made the place a natural prison. In that case, as long as both Xiaoying Xiong and Niao Hua both came here as well, Ling Han would really have no means of escape with one of them guarding a single passageway each. Hence, he had to break out before they managed to encircle him again. Channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, every strike he delivered was aimed at causing injury to both his opponent and himself. This caused Gu He to fall into a dilemma. His strength was indeed greater than Ling Han's, but he did not dare to let himself be struck even once by the celestial tool. Furthermore, Ling Han's battle prowess had also reached the level of the seventh heaven, so how could Gu He underestimate him? Gu He did not want to suffer heavy injuries himself when he killed Ling Han. Who could guarantee that Xiaoying Xiong and Niao Hua would not turn on him when they made their way here? This was the Celestial King Graveyard. The dark side in everyone's heart would be exposed and boundlessly magnified. There were no rules or laws here, and it was very easy to go mad or psychotic here. And if one died here, who would pursue the matter, and how could they pursue the matter? Hence, Gu He was going to capture Ling Han, but he could not allow himself to be injured. At the very least, he could not sustain heavy injuries, as that would affect his battle prowess. With such reservations, it was difficult for him to intercept Ling Han. Furthermore, though this was not a labyrinth, there were truly a considerable number of crossroads. Ling Han very easily grabbed hold of this, and he took this chance to charge out. Gu He hurriedly set off in pursuit, fire burning in his heart. Ling Han actually managed to escape again. But what could Gu He do? Ling Han had grasped the indestructible heaven scroll. It allowed his physique to become incredibly tough for a short period of time, allowing him to trade injury for injury. With how Gu He also had his own reservations, how was he supposed to intercept Ling Han? He wanted to reap harvests, but he was not willing to sacrifice anything. How could there possibly be anything as good as that? Ling Han moved quickly. There were really too many turns in the stairway here, which greatly impacted his speed. He did not know how long he had circled around for. He had just made another turn, when a staff suddenly swept out towards him, bringing with it an incredibly terrifying force. Miao Hua's figure appeared as well. There was a cold smirk on his face. From the look of things, he had already discovered Ling Han, yet had not appeared immediately. Instead, he had been lying in ambush here. That was indeed quite sly. Chapter 2607 Unstoppable. Chapter 2607 Unstoppable. Had Ling Han been under normal circumstances, Miao Hua would never have been able to ambush him, as the latter would have discovered the former's presence in advance. However, the current circumstances were unusual because Ling Han was running with great haste and more focused on Gu He, who was tailing him, resulting in his divine sense falling short of optimum condition as would have been under normal circumstances. Furthermore, Miao Hua had completely suppressed his aura for the sake of this ambush. Naturally, it was impossible to effectively guard against it. Ling Han only reacted when the staff swept towards him. At this time, it was already too late to turn his body around or even parry. Ling Han humped as he channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and golden seals immediately appeared on his body. Pung! Violently struck by the staff, Ling Han was predictably sent flying and slammed heavily against the wall. Under the impact of the terrifying force, the surface of the wall concaved, and the entire large tomb was shaking violently. This strike from Miao Hua's staff was so terrifying that even such a hard wall was ruptured. On the other hand, this also proved the sturdiness of the wall. The blast by someone with 8th heaven battle prowess merely left a crater on the wall. This was truly unimaginable. Ling Han groaned and continuously vomited blood. However, he didn't hesitate, and dashed forward. Still thinking of escaping? Miao Hua sneered. The power of his strike was already expended. Still, he loosened his left hand's grip on the staff, and delivered a palm strike towards Ling Han. Wang, his palm kept getting larger and larger with each strike. Flames rose, instantly turning this place into a volcanic cave. Ling Han's clothing immediately caught fire. It was made of celestial kingtir fur, but so what? It burned at a speed visible to the naked eye, revealing the skin underneath. However, that was it. Ling Han's hair was still jet black, with a crystalline sheen, and was not at all burned by the high temperature. This was only natural, since his physique strength was at the level of 6th heaven. Had Miao Hua landed a palm strike directly on him, then even Ling Han's physique would not have been able to bear it. However, this was merely a sliver of the flames Miao Hua surged out, so it was naturally impossible to hurt Ling Han. Boom! A palm strike was delivered with great momentum. Ling Han let out a battle cry, and countered with a sword slash. Shua! The sword light radiated gloriously. Pooh! That big palm was immediately cut into halves. Nothing could stand against the sharp edge of a celestial tool. Miao Hua humphed coldly and withdrew his left hand, only to see a shallow wound dripping with blood on his palm. Fortunately, it was only injured by the sword chi, not directly slashed by the celestial tool. He channeled his cultivation technique, and the bleeding immediately ceased, and the wound was healed. Detestable guy! Miao Hua gritted his teeth. Having been struck by his staff, Ling Han definitely should have sustained several broken bones and severe injuries to internal organs. Miao Hua didn't expect Ling Han still had such powerful battle prowess to fight back furiously. This kind of guy whose will to fight became stronger when the situation became more dangerous was absolutely annoying. Just like when facing a trapped tiger, Miao Hua could not be negligent, or it would be disastrous for him. Xiao, Gu Hui arrived at this moment, and the two looked at each other with surprised expressions. Despite two great elites hunting him down, Ling Han still managed to escape. This young man was indeed outrageously freakish. After him! The two set out together, and chased after Ling Han. If Ling Han managed to get out from this large tomb, the area outside would be wide, and the fog would additionally make it difficult to see, which would then allow him to escape easily. Therefore, Ling Han had to be taken down here. Ling Han, you are a prodigy of the martial academy with your name existing on the Eternal Stone. Don't you even have the guts to have one battle? Miao Hua said, naturally doing so to cause disturbance to Ling Han's mindset. Gu He also said, we promise to give you a fair chance to fight. Just pick one of us, and as long as you can endure 1,000 moves, we will never seek you again. Ling Han ran with great haste, a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Naturally, he could not believe even a single word from both of them. Fair? Had they been fair, then how could they have teamed up to snipe him, and even used a sneak attack? From this moment on, both of you should cherish every day, because there isn't much time left for you guys. Ling Han said coldly. Gu He and Miao Hua were furious. This brat was indeed too arrogant. Did he think that he was the only one making progress, while the two of them ceased to progress? Admittedly, Ling Han had more potential than them, but even if he was to surpass them, it was not a feat that could be achieved within a short period. They were also a little puzzled. Since Miao Hua had already joined Gu He, why hadn't Xiaoying Xiong appeared yet? If Ling Han were allowed to run at this rate, he might escape. But it was as if Xiaoying Xiong had completely vanished. He never appeared, allowing Ling Han to get out of the large tomb. Taking advantage of the fog, Ling Han escaped from the other two. This made Miao Hua and Gu He furious. They couldn't help but scream out to the sky with such booming sound that its intensity even caused the surrounding fog to temporarily disperse. At this moment, Xiaoying Xiong appeared. Why have you come so late? Miao Hua and Gu He demanded at the same time with extreme dissatisfaction. Xiaoying Xiong's eyes were somewhat glazed. His eyeballs were covered with a layer of black stuff. After a pause, his eyes immediately returned to clarity, and he said, I found out something, so I was delayed. What can be more important than taking down Ling Han? Miao Hua humphed. Xiaoying Xiong countered, if we can crack the secret of that thing, it absolutely will not be any less valuable than Ling Han. Oh? Miao Hua's and Gu He's eyes lit up at the same time. Then let's go take a look. Ling Han ran for a while before swiftly entering the celestial guest residence again for healing. Previously, he was almost stabbed in the heart by a celestial spear, while this time he was struck by a celestial staff. He had several broken bones, and his body was currently being destroyed by an acute murderous chi. The level of indestructible heaven scroll is still not sufficient. If I can advance it to the indestructible celestial king physique, then it will not be so difficult to fight against the celestial tool, or if I can cultivate the indestructible divine metal physique, then with a body akin to divine metal, there is no need to fear any celestial tool at all. Ling Han sighed deeply. However, after advancing the indestructible heaven scroll to such a level, one would need a massive quantity of resources to progress a step further. Thinking about it, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had also cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll only after reaching the Heavenly Venerable tier due to his limited strength. Where could Ling Han get such a quantity of resources? It was already a miracle that his indestructible celestial king physique was in fact superior to his own cultivation level now. Another half a year had passed in real time, and Ling Han had completely healed the injury caused by the celestial tool. How did those three find me? Ling Han pondered this question. He hid himself in celestial guest residence for half a year without incident, but he was sniped as soon as he appeared. It seemed that the trio had a special way to locate him. Perhaps they planted something on me during the first battle, and even heaven-deceiving technique couldn't cover my tracks. However, celestial guest residence was made of divine metal, which surpassed their means. After all, their battle prowess is merely at the level of the 8th heaven. Ling Han made such a hypothesis, but he nevertheless ran out without hesitation. He had escaped from the overwhelming danger posed by the three elites, where his life had been on a thread and being bombarded by celestial tools. Despite it being extremely dangerous, it also made him gain comprehension continuously. He believed that he could completely strengthen his foundations this time, thereby getting ready to attempt the breakthrough to the 5th heaven. He wanted to confirm his guess, and sat on the top of a large tomb to see if Miao Hua and the others would rush over swiftly. Sure enough, within half a day's time, 3 people came out of the fog. Who else could they be if not Miao Hua and company? You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.